Oh
Okay.
God! Right, live.
So it says we're live. I'm just going to wait to see if it kicks in on the
Yeah,
phone,
go
just
for
to
it.
make sure we're working. Otherwise, we don't want to have a massive chat and then be like, oh, no one saw
No,
that.
no, I'm trusting you with this. I
Yeah,
know nothing about stuff.
there's normally a tiny delay between anything. So sometimes if you see comments come up that are kind of about things that were spoken about a couple of minutes ago, that's normally because there's a delay from what we see and
Okay.
what everyone else sees.
Yeah.
Oh, something's happening. Yep, we're on. I can see us.
Perfect.
So we are
Brilliant.
so we are
Okay.
officially live. So yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Um,
Yeah.
so we've got a guest on the channel today, which is Georgie from the Cornish Farm Project, also known as the Meat Eating Mummy. So firstly, before we start off, I just want to let everyone know, we're going to be having a civil discussion today. So I'd really appreciate it if everyone in the chat is, respectful. Obviously, if you want to, say any, comebacks to anything that we're saying, obviously feel free to do that. That's all part of the spirit of debate. But if we can just keep everyone nice and friendly, that'll be much appreciated. And we've got the phlegm face in the comments who's got the mod, so she'll be booting anyone that's being an idiot. So everyone play nice. So so Georgia, thanks for coming on first.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to give everyone a bit of a
So,
background. Oh, sorry. I just going to say, just to give everyone a bit of a background of how this kind of came about. Georgia was chatting away in
yeah.
some comments. Yeah, do you want to explain?
I actually commented on the recently very public "How to Steal a Pig" and Influence People star Wesley Omar, and I watched a bit of a program. I struggle with the sort of vegan-minded sort of broadcasting because I do find it a little bit one-sided. I thought that he was quite a poor representation of what veganism is about. And I'm friends with a lot of vegans. There's a big vegan movement in Cornwall. It's not, I'm not here to attack, anybody, but I felt like it was maybe a misrepresentation of a lot of farmers in the UK, and maybe just showing one side of the industry. People panic, they see these programs on TV or things on social media, and they're worried for the animals, and they go with this media coverage, and they go with these things, because they see these shocking images, and I feel like that was a short-sighted documentary that didn't really give us much sort of information on the industrial farming methods. It was sort of more about his getting as many hits as possible, and getting as many people to see it as possible. It just felt like like a publicity stunt rather than someone who really cares about animals. And I commented on his page, and I asked him, I haven't had a response as yet, but I asked him, and I said, I would love you to be able to come and see one of our pigs on the farm, how we produce it and how we slaughter them at home. And for you to be able to tell me, to tarnish me with this same brush as, bloodthirsty monster. And for him to see that and tell me that is inhumane, what I'm doing.
Okay, well, before we go into that part of the debate, do you want to tell people a little bit about your farm, your setup, what animals do you farm, that kind of thing?
So we are not farmers by, we weren't born into it. My partner's a builder by trade. I evented horses and worked grooming horses for various event riders up until sort of early 20s when I met my partner. We actually set up a gym, so we've both got a bit of nutrition background. He's a qualified nutritionist and personal trainer, and I obviously got a bit of that as well, bit of background with nutrition in there as well. We moved to Cornwall 6 years ago when my little boy was born. for a building contract, just sort of on a whim and a hope and a prayer. And we moved to Cornwall. We rented a small holding, a 5-acre small holding, sort of just got really hooked on the lifestyle. And also, we're both really foodie. We both love animals. We both, we spend a lot of time with them, day to day. My partner's always had dogs and always had animals. We both absolutely loved it. And my partner looked for a way that he could do this all the time. And we could do this all the time. And also sort of spread our passion, to other people. So we got we applied for the lease on a 30-acre farm just outside Falmouth just over 2 years ago. And we really didn't think we were in with a chance at all against other farmers and people with sort of serious background and experience. We got the farm against 21 other people who went for it with the Cornish farm project in mind. So basically, what we do is we're set up as a not-for-profit community interest company. We produce pork, we produce poultry and eggs. We have done some lamb. We've got 6 beehives. We do our own honey. And I also do homeopathic remedies, stuff I forage, stuff I grow, and I also do a range of Cornish liquors, which are all fruit-based alcohol.
So you do loads of different stuff then.
Yeah.
Real mixed bag.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, the idea and the business goal is to make small-scale, high-welfare, organically farmed produce not only accessible but affordable for our local community. This is a massive point because a lot of people can't afford local produce. That's one of the main things that people say to me. So what we do is we do volunteer days that we swap for produce. We have people who come and help us, with fixed projects that we've sort of, fixed amount of produce that they'll get for that. We're very competitive. We don't price our products at a premium. We're not out to make profit. We are out to make these products more accessible to our local community, for the people who work, for the people who don't have time to go and individually source each product. We're basically just giving the local community an answer to having to use the supermarket for everything. And that is my main passion, is to try and use a corporation and a supermarket as little as possible. If we can spread a bit of that knowledge and a bit, I had no experience of keeping a pig or any of these things prior to moving to Cornwall. And what I try and put across to people is really, with common sense and the right facilities, really anybody has the capability of producing their own food.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's fine. So obviously one of the things that you said, which was one of the main reasons I wanted to chat to you, is you said about how you think that you can raise and kill an animal for food humanely was the word you used there.
Yeah.
So you can slaughter them humanely. So, I mean, what is your definition of humane slaughter? How would you describe that?
Obviously, no death is pleasant, whether it's a human or an animal, or, whether it's, I think when I'm thinking about humanely, I suppose I put it in a context of, well, how would you want to die? I from personal experience, from watching people suffer around me, I'd rather die as quickly as possible. So in my mind, humanely means as quickly and with as little pain and with as little stress as possible, if any. If it can be that instantaneous, then that for me is humane.
Okay.
Obviously the lead up to it is a different factor,
Okay.
Yeah,
So I guess would you agree with this statement as a blanket statement that we should try and live life, where we can. I mean, I'll rephrase that. I mean, do you think it's ethical to exploit, harm, or kill another sentient being, be that animal or human, if it's not necessary to do so? Would you agree with that statement?
I suppose it's what you deem as being necessary.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say no, of course. I wouldn't want to harm an animal or human or another living being unless absolutely necessary. But then I look around and I look at my other options, you see, and at this time of the year in the UK, I struggle with it because there isn't a lot of produce, that we can buy locally. There isn't a lot of protein sources that we can get, from British produce at this time of year. We go through a real lull, where we struggle to provide, for ourselves, and we import a lot. And I also the in the animal side of it and the welfare side of it, I take on the responsibility myself because I don't trust any of these companies to do it properly for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, going back to kind of what I was saying about necessity. Now, are you familiar with an organization called the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics? Have you heard of them before?
I have heard of them.
You've heard of them. Okay. Well, basically, they're the biggest collective of food and nutrition professionals on the planet. There's over 100,000 members. And as an organization, they've actually released a peer review statement, which actually says that a vegetarian, including vegan diets, are nutritionally adequate for us through every stage of life. That's from childbirth through lactation, that they're fine for athletes, elderly. Basically saying that our need for animal products is unnecessary because we can get our nutrition from other sources, and this is also backed up by the British Dietetic Association as well. So with that in mind, and the fact that the consumption of animal products is unnecessary, I can't. I fail to see how taking the life of another being, which has the same capacity as us to suffer, to feel pain, to feel well-being, who has an active what's the word? It has a will to live.
Absolutely.
I don't see how we can justify taking what is the most precious thing anything can have, which is sentient life, away from them for something that we don't deem necessary. I mean, what would your thoughts to that be?
So, I mean, firstly, I will say I haven't got lots of fat-based stuff. I've got my notes today,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
fine.
haven't got lots of nutritional fat-based things today because I have concentrated a little bit more. On
well, I mean, it's not so much about nutrition. It's just mainly saying that it's not necessary. I think that's the main point now.
So what I would say in response to that is that I look at, firstly, there are bodies that disagree with that. Secondly, I obviously can't back that up at this point because I don't have that information. But I also I look at the whole picture. So not just whether we nutritionally need meat in our diet, but I look at the environmental impact of if I didn't have meat in my diet. I would look at things like what my alternatives would be and the environmental impact, carbon footprint, and then I mean, hot topic for anything plant-based and anything, anything plant-based is obviously the animals, the insects, and the small animals killed in the processes.
But wouldn't you also agree that that's the same for livestock as well? I mean, pigs eat grain, chickens eat grain, cows will eat harvested grass in the winter.
I will just say, and this was sort of my sort of point today. It's probably not relevant because we're not talking about me and you, but sort of as more of a generalized thing. But my pigs personally don't eat grain, and neither do my chickens. And the reason for this is because of my moral standing on that. So my pigs actually eat a mixture of grass, fresh fruit and vegetables, and fodder beet, which is a complete food for them, which you can grow here in the UK. It's great for pigs, sheep, cows. You can plant it and they can eat it straight out the ground. It's a great source of everything. So my pigs don't actually eat grain. They don't eat anything imported, and my chickens don't eat anything imported either. My sheep, when we have them in season, they only eat grass. That's all they eat for the whole time they're with us. So I respect definitely what you're saying about, you know, whether it's 100% necessary for me nutritionally. And you're right, I could probably you know, with a good dietitian and the right information, I could get everything I need from a plant-based diet that I get from a meat diet. I absolutely agree with that. But I question the importing things at this time of year when we live in the UK. I question then all the pesticides and that that are used alongside it. I've got to look at the whole picture of it.
I mean, I would agree with you on a lot of those points in the way that you know, industrial plant agriculture is far from perfect. It is, you know, it's very damaging to the environment, especially monocropping and things like that. And these are all things that vegans are not for either, and are things that we would like to eliminate in the long run. You know, I do think buying local British fruit and vegetables where possible is a great thing to do. But I guess coming back to the ethical point, I would kind of say that despite the possible environmental benefits, you could say, if we kind of, you know, say that everything you're saying is correct of eating those animals, I would still go back and say that the death of those animals initially is still unethical, and we shouldn't be looking at what the extra gain on the environment is by killing them. We should be looking at them as an individual and thinking, should we? And if we put this into other contexts, it's something that I think you wouldn't agree with. So just to give you an example, so let's say domestic cats and dogs, for example. So cats are basically an invasive species, domestic cats. They kill millions and millions of wildlife every single year. In some areas of the world, they've actually been known to make other species extinct because of the amount they kill. Obviously, there's all the food that we have to provide for them. I believe the carbon, I think it's something like nearly 30% of all the impact of meat production comes from pet food, which is a huge impact. They actually create human deaths. They cause more road traffic accidents. Like, it's the same for cats and dogs. But what we wouldn't do is say, or actually, I'd like to ask you the question. I mean, would you approve, just because we know it would be better for the environment, of us now mass culling all the cats and dogs and eating them instead, when they would just provide just as much nutrition and they would cause just as much benefit to the environment?
Firstly, my dog wouldn't taste very nice.
But they do eat them. They are edible, and they eat them in other countries.
They are edible, but the reason that we don't eat them is because they have very low nutritional content. That. The basis of what you're saying is absolutely right. Sorry.
No, that's all right. No, not a problem.
No, I absolutely, we wouldn't eat our dogs, just because, it's, my main factor, and what I would say to you is, if I was a average housewife, mum of two, husband works full time, but you've got a lot to pay for. What I would say is that my budget could not cater for the diet that you're, an ethical, vegan or plant-based diet.
I don't know. I would argue that. I don't know. Like, Yeah, obviously, you probably don't go shopping around for vegan products as much as I do. But if we look at the cheapest foods in the supermarkets, such as beans, legumes, fruits and vegetables, they're generally very cheap. And even the meat alternatives, as much as I try and steer away from meat alternatives, I'll try and eat as much whole foods as I can these days. Even they've come down in price. I mean, you can get stuff for like a pound. Iceland do vegan burgers for £2 these days. So affordability,
right,
a couple of years ago you could argue that, but I think today I don't think that would be the case.
Unfortunately, I just won't buy products with palm oil in. I won't buy sustainable palm oil. I won't buy normal palm oil. I won't buy anything with sort of chemicals in, potassium sorbate, things like that. It sort of rules out, like you said, you eat a lot of whole foods, and that's great, and that's absolutely great for you, and I'm sure that you get everything you need from your diet. However, I do have a lot of young vegan, maybe even recently turned vegan friends who maybe don't eat as well as you. I think it's a lot harder to put your complete diet together and make sure that you're getting enough of all the relevant vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. You obviously know what you're eating, and you've got a planned diet, and you know that you're getting everything you need. Now, when this sort of media campaign is sort of blasted at you from every angle, and poor animals, and look at all these commercial farming videos and things, and people go out and they buy something that's going to make the planet better and make the animals better and make but it's sort of I just feel it's short-sighted, because I feel like I've got like I wrote a few notes earlier, so for example, you named, because you're right, I don't know any vegan products really. So I've got so Violife, obviously, coconut oil is the main ingredient. Flora is palm oil. Vitalite is palm oil. Vitalite is actually owned by Danone. Now, I won't have, it's Danone and Dairy Crest, who have actually, I didn't know, also now bought Alpro. And it's corporations like that really pee me off, because they're putting a vegan plant-based label on a product, and then on the flip side they are the worst of the worst of the industrial dairy farming, and I just cannot put money in these people's products. When I buy my milk from, let's say Jane down the road, I know that that's come from Jane, and that's come from her cow in her field, and she's not funding, the destruction of the world and the planet. I mean, let's face it, the supermarkets and the big corporations, and like you said, industrial farming, whether it's arable, livestock, anything in that kind of size and volume, is just bad. It's bad for
well, this is the thing, though. I agree with the things that you're saying, and I think where we I think where we definitely agree on is stuff like the big corporations and the importing of food and all that kind of stuff is damaging and everything. We can all agree with this, but I don't think any of these things is a reason not to pursue to be vegan. We've got to think back to the basics of the animals, and these animals, like I said, they're living, breathing beings just like us. They feel pain and can suffer just like us. And I think regardless of the pitfalls that we might face by the current plant-based diet as it is currently, and these other factors, I don't feel are as important enough to warrant taking a life. And they are things that we can improve on. For example, we can encourage people to start buying from local farmers markets. We can encourage people to not buy as many processed foods. We can then start to put pressure on these companies to say, you know what, we don't want palm oil in our products. We'd rather have something more sustainable. We don't want this. We don't want this. Because what vegans are looking at, we're not just looking at changing the animal agriculture system, but we want to change the plant food system also. But we can only deal with one at a time. So I think at the moment, because basically if everyone switched from animal agriculture to plant agriculture, it's going to be a lot easier then to put pressure on the farmers to say, well, hold on a minute, you got palm oil in your product, this other one hasn't, we're all going to go for the one that hasn't got palm oil. And then you can start to kind of work the market. And another problem I see with the kind of setup that people are going for, while I can see that you have good intentions of what you're doing as far as environmental impact, ultimately it's not scalable to meet the demand.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah, to meet the demand of the current, population for meat, it would require us taking up so much more land that we've got. And as much as it's a horrible thing to realize, factory farming is actually more sustainable because we can compact more animals into a smaller area who grow faster. Obviously the treatment is not there at all. It's horrific. But then I would just go back to the fact that, that there is no nice way to exploit and kill an animal in any system. So I think that while I can see what you are doing is, I understand what you are doing. I think that what you are doing is still ultimately an unethical practice, which can only get us so far. And because someone actually said in the chat, they said you sound like a vegan, the way that you talk. Because you've obviously got that, you've obviously got a lot of the same values that we do. The only difference. So carry on. What were you going to say?
We do this. Yeah, we do this, and a lot of people are going to laugh at me, but we do this because we love animals. We genuinely do not make a profit. We genuinely,
But can you see the contradiction though? Can you see the contradiction of saying you love animals, but you kill them for an unnecessary reason? Can you see that contradiction?
Yeah, I can. I think it's tough to put it across to someone who is looking at it completely different angle. The thing that I just have to put to you is that at this time of year, but one of my main arguments that I get from sort of from vegan friends is the environmental impact that beef mainly has on our planet. A lot of the figures and a lot of the facts are based on American farming methods in commercial farms, but that's one of the main points that comes up. Now I can't get what I need in this country for nutritionally at this time of year. I can't get it if I don't eat meat. So what I get out of eating red meat once a week, and now this is the key thing, right? Because as the world eats too much meat, you're absolutely right. We couldn't sustain the UK. If we all ate meat at the rate that we were eating it, you're right. We couldn't feed ourselves. The UK was actually sustainable in lamb, has been sustainable. I think there were 2 or 3 years in the past 10 years that we've actually been completely self-sufficient in lamb. So we do actually we can facilitate that. But I think I've completely lost where I was going with that.
That's fine.
I think the main thing is that we do eat too much meat, and we eat too much crap meat, and we eat, as a nation, we eat McDonald's, and we eat sausage rolls, and we eat pasties, and we eat, and all this stuff, and we don't really take note. It's different when you see a product on the supermarket shelf and you look, oh, is it free range? Is it this? Is it that? It's a bit different when you buy a product from a bakery or from a restaurant, and you don't often sort of take much note of what's actually in it. I just think I've lost my page again.
Well, I think the thing is, I get what you're saying. Obviously, one thing you care about is sustainability, and you do care about the environmental impact and everything like that, which is, like I said, is something that vegans we're on your side when it comes to that. But the difference is we want to do it without the animals. We think that we can do exactly that without the animals, because if we look at the way that farming is progressing, obviously, not including all farming, the vast majority of crops that we're growing at the moment is going to feed animals in animal agriculture. if we could scale back on that,
35% in the UK is imported for agriculture.
yeah,
35.
yeah,
So
so,
it's less than half. So the
yeah,
soya imported into the UK, over half is for non-agricultural purposes. Just so
but you forget
yeah.
there's all the palm, which is imported for dairy and everything as well. There's a lot of stuff imported, but I'm talking about on a worldwide scale. I mean, with the kind of steps forward in in plant agriculture, stuff like vertical farming, hydroponics, veganic farming, is going to allow us to be able to grow food more locally using less pesticides, less land use, less water usage, and stuff like that. Which would be great if we can start growing these things that we're importing on a more local scale. But with animal agriculture, we can't do that. The only solution which we want to do, which is what we see as more ethical, obviously that depends on what you define as ethical in those terms, is to continue down that grass-fed route of these local farms, which then requires more land and ultimately isn't sustainable. So it's kind of counterproductive to be moving towards that when plant technology is guiding us down a route, and we've got lab meat on the way as well, remember, which is going to mean we don't need to kill any animals at all and still get the same thing. So it kind of seems a bit. So carry on. What were we going to say?
What do you suggest then? So say we do that and we farm, hydroponically or and we can do that. So we don't need manure, presumably, to do that. And we don't need, animal products to do that. So what do you suggest that we do with all the grassland and the moorland in England that at the moment is maintained by livestock, heritage breeds, sheep and cows? What do you suggest that we do with that land that can't be grown on?
Well, this is the thing with actually, I've got a paper here, so I've got a link. There are already people developing technologies to grow in the desert. So these areas, as much as we don't see them as being viable to grow crops currently, there's no reason that we won't be able to use them in the future for those purposes. But also one thing that we do want to do is with some land is, we're looking at trying to absorb carbon from the atmosphere and allowing some areas to actually rewild and allowing our native animals to start to repopulate and things as well is also going to be hugely beneficial to not just us and the environment, but to our native animals as well. So these things are only temporary problems that can't be solved. And the world's not going vegan overnight. So we are going to have time to make those progresses.
And this is the thing, is that there will always be someone that you can't persuade, and this is what I feel, with my place as well. And you must feel it, you do this, day to day. And there are always going to be some people that you won't get to, right? So say that, we can do everything we possibly can, but there's still going to be someone out there who's eating a McDonald's burger or whatever, that's like worse.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't all do what's right, though.
No,
if you put it into another context, I know what you're saying, but if we put it into another context, I mean, if we look at animal rights as a rights issue, we're fighting for the rights of the other species on the planet. We've had women fighting for their rights, we've had people of color fighting for their rights, we've had the LGBT community. There will always be people that will still be against those those movements. So there are people that still hate women or they hate blacks, but that doesn't mean that the rest of us who know what's right shouldn't continue and push everything forward in the right direction.
Right? And who's to say, who's right? And the thing is, what I feel and what makes me just so frustrated with the whole vegan movement is that a lot of people that I talk to are just as passionate and agree with me as you have, with on a lot of points, and I agree with you on a lot of points. And I just sort of feel that we're all fighting with each other about a lot of things that actually we agree on, as young people, and we all, we're not stupid. We know, what an animal suffering looks like. We know we shouldn't be putting money in the pockets of these people, and I just feel that if everyone put as much passion and as much effort into fighting against the corporations as they do against fighting against each other and about their diet choices, I just feel like the world would be a lot better place, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you know, fighting the big corporations to do the things, but I guess that's still where we would conflict in the fact that we want to tell these big industries and all industries that, you know, that animals have moral value, and we think that they should be left out of the equation. And I think there'll always be that thing there. You know, some stuff we definitely could join forces on, and there are actually some things that I want to bring up a bit later, which will kind of cover what I kind of mean by that. But I think ultimately, I think this is what a lot of people don't understand. What vegans are fighting for is, yeah, it's a justice issue. It's not. We're not following a diet, because it goes beyond that. It goes beyond. It goes into every aspect of our lives, whether it's eating, wearing clothes, using animals for entertainment, in all different senses. So
I feel like.
So carry on. What are you going to say?
Really quickly, I think it's hard because I think everybody sort of seems to have different reasons why they are a vegan. Do you know what I'm? You know, I you know, as a general, like, completely get, you are a vegan through and through. You are, you know, and I absolutely salute you for your, you know, your work with animal rights, and, you know, I'm absolutely, you know, brilliant. But not everybody is as clued up and you know, doing it, you know, as sort of ethically as you are, you know.
Yeah, well, that's what we try and do, you know, because
yeah,
you know, I don't believe that anyone's a bad person. I don't believe farmers are inherently bad people. I don't believe that people that eat animal products are inherently bad people. I think what has happened is we have all been brought up into a world where this has been seen as normal, and we've been told that it's necessary. But when we look at it deeper and we start to realize, well, it's not actually as necessary as we think it is. You know, and we're just starting to question that, and we're starting to be like, well, you know, we understand, like you understand that your dog can feel pain and suffer, and you know, you wouldn't do what you do to the pigs that you raise to your dog. And I think it's real. We're trying to get people to kind of realize those contradictions that we have in our heads, and not even purposefully. It's just because that is the way we've been brought up to think. And I think when people start to think about it on a more deep level, they start to connect and be like, well, actually, yeah, I wouldn't treat my dog in this way. If it's not necessary, why am I doing it? And that's kind of what we're about. I mean, people do it in different ways. Some people are a little bit more aggressive about it and a little bit more forceful, as you've probably seen. You know, people like me, I prefer a more educational approach. I prefer just to have a chat.
Interesting.
Yeah, I prefer to have a chat with people. I think this is more constructive, because ultimately, vegans need farmers. We just want them to farm plants, not animals. So, so if you want to change your farm to plants, everyone here will love you.
I tell you what, I've tried. we are at a really high point where we are now. Now, this is a prime example, right? I cannot grow a bloody thing here. Everything, as I said, we're not farmers. You know, we don't come from a farming background. When we took on the farm, I said, right, I'm going to turn those 3 fields into, I'm going to plough them up, and I'm going to plant strawberries for my drinks, right? So absolute waste of time. Paid lots of money to get all the fields ploughed up and had it all beautifully prepared. Strawberries dead within like a couple of weeks because they're absolutely wind scorched. We can't grow. I can't grow anything here. Absolutely nothing. You know, and that is honest truth. And probably with the right kit and the right, you know, and I probably could, but genuinely, you know, I don't have a lot of money for food, and I feel that I know a lot of people would disagree with me here, but I feel like I give my kids and my family a premium product that I wouldn't otherwise be able to afford or get anywhere, you know, at this quality, and they get a quality of produce that I don't feel that I could provide for them, you know, from a supermarket.
I can understand what you're saying there. I guess I would just come back to that the produce comes at a cost. The cost of, you know, a life, and it's weighing up, you know, is there other alternatives? And there are. I mean, we all live in the UK. I mean, I'm not too far from you. I live in the southwest myself. You know, we've all got fruits and vegetables readily available to us. You know, I think that if we have that option there, I mean, this is why, you know, we don't necessarily have.
Sorry,
so
you haven't got at this time of year, you haven't got very much to offer you that crucial B12, you know, and you haven't got, if you were to just be here in the UK and you were to just eat plant-based food at this time of year. And as well, I mean, I've got lots of friends who are vegetarian, you know, and obviously where you're cutting out the eggs as well, you know, you make it, you know, it's then even more limited, you know, with if you're not eating meat for protein and all your vitamins and minerals and things, then, you know, at least, you know, you've got some vegetarians who can sort of keep themselves going with you know, a bit of dairy and a bit, you know, and some eggs. And I mean, what is your take on eggs?
So I guess what we need to understand about chickens that lay eggs is they have been genetically bred throughout the years to now lay far more eggs than they ever should. Their actual original descendant is the red jungle fowl, and the red jungle fowl I think only laid around 15 eggs a year, I believe. It's a very small number anyway, nowhere near what they do now. Now due to the, you know, genetic modification that we've done, these birds are now pumping out near 300 plus per year, which personally I don't see it as ethical in itself. I think that it's almost cruel that we are bringing an animal into the world which is destined to suffer because of that. Because, you know, I've seen a lot of eggs, you know, egg laying chickens. They can get I think it's called egg peritonitis, to get the eggs stuck up inside them. It's quite regular. So, and eggs
We've
are
never had, but it does happen.
And eggs are, again, they're a product that we do not need at all. And I would argue exactly the same for dairy. Well, I argue the same for all animal products, but for dairy as well. I mean, you know, we've only drunk dairy as a species for the last, I think it's 11,000 years. We don't even drink our own mother's breast milk past a few years old, and there's no reason for us to be consuming the milk of another species. So I think that, you know, and I see dairy as probably more unethical than meat, in the way that, you know, we are making an animal must be pregnant. We are taking away the milk from it. In some cases, the babies are getting taken away, and then ultimately that system is just being repeated, and then we're sending them to slaughter. And I do have a lot of, you know, ethical issues with both. Well, you know, as you know, with all aspects. I mean, I even do think that even in the best case scenario, even if a pig was given a life in a mansion and it had like the best life ever, I think that still ending its life when it has a will to live and it's unnecessary is still a bad thing to do. And if we put it into a human context, if just because we've had a good life, it wouldn't be ethical for someone to just come and kill us for an unnecessary reason either. So I don't think there is a nice way to kill a being that doesn't want to die. I don't see that as ethical.
Okay, well, I suppose it's looking at sort of the different points, and I suppose what you deem as being humane. The lethal injection that people, I mean, I like you said, you've got sort of, you know, quite strong views on domesticated animals, and I'm guessing you don't have any pets.
The only animal I have is you can see the little thing over there. So I have a rat, which was a rescue. So I was actually at a rescue centre, and someone mentioned they were. I never buy animals ever. I fully encourage the adoption of animals. As far as I'm concerned, these animals have been bred into existence. We have a moral duty to make sure these animals are cared for. So if they're here already, I think we have a moral duty to care for them. But I do not believe in promoting or buying into the pet trade in any way. I think the pet trade is I actually want to make a documentary on the pet trade. We could have a whole discussion on that another time if you like. There's lots I could say on the pet trade, but we'll stick to this for now. Otherwise, I'll go off on a tangent.
Well, you know, just a really quick look at you know, euthanization for example,
Yeah.
and an animal that's suffering. An animal that's suffering might not be, terminally ill. They might have, broken a leg, and for a chicken or a duck, or, the chances are pretty slim, and that they're not picked on by the others. And so, for a dog, humane way, they do the, lethal injection. Now, I worked for the RSPCA. When I left school, I worked in the, I worked with horses and donkeys with the RSPCA. Absolutely hated it. But we put down a couple of older horses, and I've also seen a few bigger farm animals, and sadly had the odd dog put down over the years. When you can do nothing else, that is the most inhumane method of killing an animal that I think I've ever seen, and it's really traumatizing to watch. It's basically they're injected with poison, and for older or a less fit animal, it could take them longer to die. So things like they struggle to breathe. Horses and larger animals can drop to the ground and can still take 3 or 4 minutes to stop breathing.
I've seen the process happen with some larger animals.
It's
before,
it's pretty hard to stand there and watch.
I guess what the difference is, though, before we go too far down there, I guess the difference is that what we are talking about currently is times when it will be necessary to put those animals out of their misery, and we're doing it in their best interests. And while I can agree that maybe maybe the lethal injection is not the best option, and maybe even just shooting them may even put them out of their misery faster, we're doing that for their own benefit. But when we're killing an animal for food, the animal's not benefiting from that. We're not doing it. We're doing it for our interest, not for theirs.
So what's your take on me eating a deer that's being killed on the road?
Oh, that's absolutely fine. The deer was killed.
That's fine.
You didn't. Yeah, you didn't kill the deer. The deer died of an accident. If you want to eat the meat.
So in that, so then in another context, so when my chickens get really old and they stay, we don't get rid of them when they stop laying or anything like that. We can't tell which ones are laying and which aren't. They're just here, and they're completely free range. There is no fence. The only reason we shut the door of the barn at night is so the fox doesn't eat them, and sometimes we've had the odd chicken that has, been sort of, they start getting fluffed up and they look a bit, sad, and they're not sort of engaging as much. And normally when they get a bit older and they're sort of, they're slowing down a bit, and everything starts to slow down a bit. And when they're sort of really miserable and on their last legs, then we'll sometimes put them out of their misery at that point really quick. Now, I use those regularly for casseroles. I use them to give my dogs food. And the commercial food industry and the supermarkets and generally has made it so that old animals actually aren't viable and don't taste very good, and nobody wants to eat these old animals. Well, it's rubbish, because in 50, 60 years ago, the older animals were the best quality ones. We've now got into this market where it's like fatten it up and grow it as big as possible, as quickly as possible. And, and who cares, we just eat it like that. It's fine. It's fat, it's fine, and the thing is that we used to appreciate animals for their whole lives. And then, when their days were up, then we'd feed our family with it.
I mean, as far as eating animals that have kind of like died naturally, or if an animal is to the end of its life and you're killing them in the best interests of that animal because you don't want them to suffer. In the same way, I would accept that if someone wanted to, be euthanized, euthanize a human if they were suffering. I do believe in assisted suicide. I think that's fine. That to me is, there's no big ethical issue in eating that animal, because if it's dead, that's fine. You only were acting in its best interest. But the situation that's not the situation that we're in with our food. What we are doing is we are purposely breeding them to then kill them, generally at quite an early age. Like, most of them don't live kind of, well, I think dairy cows are probably the longest living out of all animals.
Oh,
You know, pigs live for about 4 to 6 months generally. Chickens 6 to 8 weeks.
yeah.
You know, we're killing them when they're babies. So I think the situation is very, very different, and we're, you know, I mean, if someone wants to eat something
We
that's
don't
dead,
need.
yeah, if someone wants to eat something that's dead, like, you know, feel free. The animal's not being harmed if it's already dead. I mean, doesn't personally appeal to
I
me.
just,
I
I
wouldn't do it
wonder.
because I'm saying I don't want to. I wouldn't personally do it because I don't see animals as food, and I
Yeah.
don't think,
Yeah.
I think it perpetuates a strange way of thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we've got to basically come, yeah, to make things short, because I'm kind of rabbling a bit here. The general gist of it is the situations are very different. One, we're doing within the best interest of the animal, and when you eat an animal that has already died for a reason, or it's had to be put down because it was suffering, then we acted within the best interest of those animals. When we're killing them when they're extremely young, we are not acting within the animal's interests, only our self-interests, and that's where I think
Yeah.
that's what I think the distinction is.
And I mean that is mostly put upon us, you know, by the commercial industries again, you know, because a small scale farmer, you know, it won't be, you know, fatten it up as quick as it can, you know, to a cutoff point. It'll be when it's ready, you know, or when it's, you know, at a certain point. And I get it, you know, in no circumstance, you know, in your mind is an animal food, and in no circumstance, you know, but I respect you for saying that you're fine with me eating a dead deer off the road, because
If you want to eat roadkill, go ahead. I would rather you go and eat roadkill than farm animals, but 100%. You want to go and eat
well, I'll
roadkill?
go and find some. It's fine. But you know, as far as chickens go, just coming back to the
Yeah, sure.
chicken and
Go
the
for it.
egg, you know, a lot of our animals have been genetically modified over time to make them more convenient for us. Meat birds are one of the worst. We've, you know, tried to do poultry for ourselves, and we've bought chickens that are the specific breed that you're meant to buy to have chicken, you know, meat with. Well, it didn't work at all for us because our chickens are completely free range, and these chickens have been genetically modified, really sad, to live inside in a small container with a feed tray, and all they do day and night is stand next to their feed tray. It's like they're not even, you know, all the other chickens, my red ladies, you know, they walk out the door and they go out for the day. And these two white ones, they stand next to the feeder, and it's like they don't have a stop button, you know, they just sit there all day. And, you know, and that is what we've, you know, we as humans, you know, this is what we've done to them. And it's the same, you know, with dogs and overbreeding in dogs and overbreeding in breeds, and they've got, you know, problems with their eyes and their, you know, and everything else, and specific problems to a breed, and we've really messed it up, you know, in that sense. But the chickens, you know, are and have been that way, and have been laying, you know, 300 eggs a year or whatever, you know, for some time now. And, you know, it's not a
But
recent thing now.
yeah, but
And
you
my
wouldn't say
chicken,
just because something's happened for a long time that necessarily makes it
no, but
ethical, though, right?
no, but the is absolutely not ethical. But we are left with the chicken as it is, you know, and we're left with the dogs as they are. And I don't agree with the methods that we've used to get to that point. But lots of vegans keep chickens, you know, lots of, you know, there are lots of people rescuing chickens. There are lots of battery, you know, whether you choose to have one or not, you know, obviously there have been a few people.
Well, again, I wouldn't have an ethical issue if someone had removed a chicken from a farm and wanted to let them live out their life. I don't see an ethical issue. If
No.
I would say that was the right thing to do, to remove them from farm.
Okay, so then you've got this chicken, say you've rescued this chicken,
Yeah.
right? And you've got this, and it's living really lovely. Like, it takes them a while to get over being in, you know, those kind
Yeah.
of states. We've rescued hundreds of battery hens over the years. But what we're left with is our chickens lay through 10 to 11 months of the year. So normally chickens that are farmed commercially or industrially will have artificial light. And the light is actually, as you probably know, the light is what makes them process and lay the eggs, you know. So without those daylight hours and without that artificial light, those chickens wouldn't be laying as many eggs anyway. And we obviously don't put artificial lights. We've got no electric out there. We've got a little dark barn. So, you know, when it starts getting dark, they will take themselves inside and they will get up on their perches. And I go in there and shut the door. Now, for a couple of months of the year, they might not lay any eggs. You might still have the odd one, you know, that's still laying. And I've found over the years that that is something that is only free range. You know, they actually will keep laying longer, actually, when they're happy in free roaming environments, you know, than people that keep them in cages, you know, they stop laying. But my point is that for 9-10 months of the year, those chickens aren't in the slightest bit interested in their eggs, right? So you've got a broody hen, you know, that'll sit on an egg that will attack you anytime you go near it. That's, you know, at that time of year when we're coming into spring and we've got a cockerel and the egg may or may not be fertilized. A lot of the time it isn't. And the chicken will still insist on sitting on it for 28 days, you know, just in case. And she will go into like this trance and she will get off the egg for half an hour a day to have food and drink, and then she'll get back on the egg and she'll sit there, and we just let them go through the motions, and we just say, and sometimes an egg hatches and sometimes it doesn't. But what happens is when you've got like, you know, 50 chickens or whatever, and they're all wanting to pile into the nesting boxes in the morning and lay their eggs, then what happens is you just end up with loads of eggs in there.
Yeah.
Now, what we're saying,
I actually made a whole video about this subject, about the backyard egg subject. Yeah, so there's definitely things I can say. Now, what I will say is, if you did want to eat eggs, eating the abandoned egg of an egg-laying chicken would be the most ethical way to do that. But there are things that we need to consider kind of before we even get to that stage. I mean, initially, even the breeding and keeping of chickens for the eggs in the first place is an ethical concern. We're basically keeping animals as a commodity, and should we be keeping animals at all? That would be a first concern. There are also things which you're probably familiar with some of these. It doesn't seem like you do it yourself, but when chickens are broody and people do remove their eggs, chickens are very likely to want to lay another egg faster to then replace their clutch. As we know, they're already putting their body through about 300 eggs a year, so that's actually creating them more stress on their body, which I think is something we should actively avoid.
Yeah, I mean,
another thing is we should also feed a lot of the eggs back to the chickens, because they actually have the amount they lay. They do lose a lot of calcium in their body, and if you crack, you've probably done this before, if you crack an egg and feed them to the chicken.
This is where your problem is, you see, Chris, because when you've got like 50 chickens and you'd actually like some of them to hatch chicks, then what happens is, just like an animal or a pig getting a taste for meat, the chickens get a taste for the shells. Now, if you break, like you say, if you break an egg, they will all bundle on it. They love it.
Yeah.
You know,
but I guess I would say, though, is it ethical to continue to breed other animals into existence when they're just going to live a life in captivity? Would that be ethical would that be ethical in the first place to even allow these animals to breed?
Well, I don't make the chickens breed. The chickens are rescued, as you said, you know, you were okay with. So the chickens are rescued from battery farms at the end of their career, so to speak. You know, they will never, even though they might, you know, try and lay another egg, like you're saying, I have never seen a chicken lay more than an egg a day. So, you know, that's sort of the first thing. But if you allow them to eat an eggshell, if I was to leave them in there, first thing is the rats. You know, where being on a farm, it might not be the same for everyone, but when you start having eggshells and smell of food, you know, you attract vermin basically in the barns and in the, which again, you know, maybe if we didn't have animals, then we wouldn't have this problem. But, you know, we are in this situation, and we do have these rescued chickens, and so I remove the eggs every day to stop them smashing them up in the straw, basically, where the next chicken stands on them and cracks one, and it gets messy and unhygienic, or the rats come and eat them. I take them away to avoid another chicken pecking it, because I don't want, when that broody hen gets off her egg for that hour a day, you don't want the other chicken to go and go and start eating the eggs. We don't want the chickens to eat the eggs, because what they have in their environment is access to the grit and the shell that they need. What you're saying, what they can get out of.
Just to be clear, is it you don't want them to eat the eggs because is it just because you want the eggs, or because of you want them to have the chicks? Just trying to be clear.
Eggs, if I did not eat the eggs, I would still remove them for hygiene reasons, and also to avoid having fertile eggs pecked.
Okay, that's fine. I think we must have gone mixed up somewhere. I thought that you were actively allowing them to have chicks. I thought that's what you were saying before. So you're not doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, you are.
No, we do allow have chicks. Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
Because that's all right. Yeah. That's right. I think we're just getting crossed wires. But I mean, what I would say about that is it as you know, I mean, there are so many chickens that need rehoming from, especially like the Hens Trust and stuff. There's always hundreds of birds that need rehoming. And it's the same with cats and dogs. I think that we should stop breeding cats and dogs when we have so many other animals that need homes. So by bringing more life into the farm, as far as bringing extra chicks are involved, you're actually taking away resources where you could be giving a chicken that's already here an extra chance at life, if you see what I mean. And that's why I would say there would be a problem. Obviously, aside from the egg eater and stuff like that, I think that would be a problem.
My only issue with that, and this is the same as with the dogs and neutering and with, is that I actually feel, especially as having had kids myself, I'm a completely different person as a result of it. I feel, not for everyone, but it's a fairly natural process. It's not the same as me having a dog to breed from and going and putting it in a room with a stud dog and making that happen. We keep chickens. I often rescue cockerels. I've often got too many cockerels because people will just kill them, or will just, and they're often so beautiful. We just have them as, as ornamental. I don't sell live chickens. I don't, the only chickens that we have here, they start and they end here. And I'm in a position to be able to say that I can wholeheartedly, say that they're my responsibility from day one till the end. The difference is with like breeding dogs or cats or horses or anything else is that, they're often not taken on as a responsibility or by that one person, or it's not taken seriously. A lot of the time, things with dogs and things with horses, and where we put them, we give them, we make them have that baby at that time. It might not have been naturally the time that they would have chosen. They might not want to have puppies on their first season. They might not be developed enough to be able to do that. But then the chickens in their own environment, and I have very little to do with them, they are all over the place. They go out the door and they literally just go all different directions, and they can go, they're nowhere near, the road. They can go for as far as they want. That is, and I just think, I forgot where I was going again. Really long.
Yeah, no. I think what you were trying to say is that you think that allowing them to have the chicks is a part of their natural process. So, is that kind of what you're saying?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, basically, what I would say back to that is we've got to realize that what the situation these chickens are in currently is completely unnatural. They're not actually in a natural situation. The breed as a whole, the domestic chicken in itself, is unnatural. And I think sometimes unnatural situations do sometimes require unnatural solutions. Now, where I actually think it is, and I think it is unethical to to say neuter dogs and to spay cats and to stop a chicken breeding. I do think that is another unethical act. On the other hand, I think it is it's almost become a necessary evil, and it's the lesser of two evils, because all we are doing to that animal is bringing them into a life of captivity, and we are denying the well-being of another animal which is already there. So I think that as much as the act, we shouldn't do it at all. I don't, I wish that we didn't have to. I think that it's almost a necessary thing to do, and I think it is actually the more ethical choice than just allowing another bird to come into existence. To, I think it will actually increase suffering by adding these animals into the world.
So do you think that do you think it would be better to not have the cockerel, or do you think it would be better to just take the egg away, at that first point?
I think we should remove the eggs in the best way possible to cause at least stress to the chickens.
Because this is the thing, is that with a broody hen, if you take her egg away from her, then she will be distraught. Yeah. And I'm telling you, that there's a certain noise, and they're, and they run around and they're looking, and they're not, birds.
But all you got to do is get to it before it's going to hatch. Mainly, and there's also you can also replace the eggs with the ceramics as well. So you can actually, so you can do that to kind of, trick the bird, which again I don't see as an ethical thing, but it's a necessary thing, by replacing their eggs with ceramics, which means you keep them happy, and at the same time you're still removing the eggs and trying to fix the problem.
What I mean is they lose quite a lot of condition while they're sat on the eggs for 1 month.
Yeah.
And obviously, that it's sort of it's a bit of a.
Well, I mean, I would remove the cockerel as well, because in the end, if you haven't got the cockerel there, then they're not going to be fertilized, and then we don't have to worry about that. So
yeah, no, I was just interested.
No, it's fine. No, feel free to feel free to question me as much as you like. That's not a problem at all. It's a learning curve for both sides. So.
Yeah, we've already done fallen stock, Rocky. My partner, Rocky's just been scraping dead animals off the road, you see.
Oh yeah, going around finding all the things. I think going on to slightly things. I think from where we got at the moment, obviously, I think we're just going to have different views. I mean, like I said, I don't agree that we can kill an animal humanely. I think that it's an unnecessary thing, and I think that by your point of view, you're going to disagree with me, and we're probably not going to get a. Or I don't know. I think in a way you have actually you do actually understand that it is unnecessary.
I do understand where you're coming from. What I can't find, and it might be different in the future, but what I haven't got is an alternative that measures up the same as what I can cater for myself. And this is what I was saying, is that we're not talking about you or I, because we are very fortunate to be in this position. We are also very fortunate to be in Cornwall, because we are surrounded by amazing small farmers and local producers, as you are in Devon, I'm guessing. So, we're really fortunate. We actually come from Hampshire, about 40 minutes from London, and the farm shop is really overpriced, really premium. It's only for, high-end market, and you really haven't got a lot of choice, so your choice is the supermarket pretty much, or you could, if you've got the time, you can source individual products online. But we are fortunate here, and we are very fortunate to be in the position where we can produce food at this level. But I mean, I'm not stupid. I know, that we're lucky to have this, and we are, one of few, and actually what we're talking about is on a much bigger scale. Like I said to you, my gripe isn't with, you know, you as a vegan, or as my gripe is with the media just, you know, constantly slaying farmers. And I feel like,
But
you
they
know,
also do the
I'm not,
same back to vegans. Like the media aren't
yeah,
good to vegans either. So you got to admit it's on both sides. You know, we get a lot of
maybe,
stick.
yeah, maybe we both, you know, maybe it feels like that from both angles. It just feels like everybody's always fighting all the time, you know. We had, you know, all the Brexit stuff, and like, you know, we won't even go there, you know, and then we've
Well,
got,
I
you
guess
know,
just to put it into perspective, just so you kind of understand the vegan side mostly, I think the reason that vegans are so passionate is because we we are defending lives basically. But I guess a really good way to put this is, if you find any article online or anything on Facebook about the Yulin Dog Meat Festival, okay, where they're eating dogs, and go through the comments, and you will see mostly people that aren't vegan, like, horrified with what's happening. All that vegans are doing is, we've extended that compassion to not just dogs, but to pigs and cows and chickens. And that is why we are so passionate, because we are seeing an injustice to living beings.
yeah,
And that is why. And I'm not saying that shouting and screaming at people is necessarily the most effective way of doing that. But it is no different an outlet to some people than when people are screaming that those people are murderers and they're horrible people, and I wish that would happen to them, when they're talking about the dog meat festival. It's no different. And I think when you actually compare, compare and see, you'll see that, okay, yeah, it isn't. All it is humans that are, just very much disagreeing with what's happened, and they're seeing an injustice. And we do the same with human injustice as well. Yeah, go for it.
I see as what I'm doing is offering an alternative to those people that are going to eat meat regardless. What I do, and what I hope sort of to achieve by being here, is to offer those people that you'll never get to, that eat their, their rubbish quality, factory farm meat, to go, actually, that's not, if you're going to eat meat, don't eat that. Come and meet our pigs, come and see this, come and see, that actually from start to finish, however unpleasant it is, we do it, and actually that was sort of, I completely respect your life choice and but I do feel that, united people are so much better, and it just means so much more. And the truth of it is the only way that you stop these corporations producing something is to stop buying it and to stop giving them their money. And if there's nobody buying, the same concept, as you buying, your vegan products or your Whole Foods, or, if there's nobody buying that crap meat on the supermarket shelves, and if people actually are educated about it, but then it doesn't have to, I feel like it doesn't have to be so extreme. So a lot of people switch off when they see, like, vegan, or, but it doesn't have to be that. You can eat one portion of red meat that's locally sourced, that's, done in methods. Obviously you can't, but but you're, people who want to eat meat, should know the differences in the farming, on an industrial scale, and then on something like we do. And the internet is a wonderful thing in that, even those people that aren't as lucky as us to live in the West Country can order, fat cow milk online. They can order chickens that they can see, online.
I guess what I'd ask you though is, would you take the stance that you have with what happens to animals with other causes, for example? So say something like domestic abuse. I mean, would you say that it should stop, or would you say that we should just cut down? Because that's what I kind of see that people are arguing. They're more kind of like, we shouldn't stop doing it. We understand it's wrong and it's unethical, but we should just cut down doing it. But in every other context, when we see an injustice, we say, no, that should stop. So what would your thoughts be on that?
compare it to domestic abuse. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, would you not say that we are doing an act of violence onto these animals by taking their life? No, you wouldn't consider.
I would say, so abuse, I would say, is different to killing something instantaneously.
But if someone did that to you, would you class that as okay then?
Well, if someone shot me in the head,
so, yeah, but I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, if someone, just say someone did that to someone else, you wouldn't say, "Oh, that was fine. It was ethical. They went quickly."
No, but if
you would say that was wrong. They wanted to live. They wanted to carry on their lives.
It might be, that I was born, in the time that I am, but I have been brought up eating meat.
Yeah.
And I have been brought up as, food is my dad was German. He was very into meat, and he was very into dripping and salt. And I come from, a big meat eating family. I love to cook. I've always involved meat in my cooking. I'm very foodie. I don't see meat like you do. So
what's the thing? I don't see it as meat. I see it as a living being. I think this is where the difference is. Yeah, I don't see a product. I see an animal.
But then, just like, with people and extended abuse, that what you're saying, like a domestic abuse, that's what I see industrial farming as. That is daily, it's constant abuse. It's constant mental, physical abuse. That is not on the same level at all.
Okay, well, look, just as a thought experiment. Okay, so we're going to take what you said there. So just say that we took someone who was doing domestic abuse, but what we did is, instead of beating someone every single day, they just punched them once a week.
Yeah, but I don't.
Would you still find that ethical, even if it was less?
So what it would be equivalent to is for that person who's suffering domestic abuse to actually live and have everything that they like for their whole lives, and then their partner to walk up behind them one day and shoot them in the head.
And would you class that as ethical? And would you say that was ethical?
If humans had eaten other humans for millennia, and that is what their basic nutrition, your basic diet involved, and that's what they've grown up living. Now, I can't obviously put myself in this context because I don't eat people, but
thank God. That's a good thing.
I can not yet. I can only say how my mindset, and that is that they're just worlds apart, and that our pigs, as I don't know if you saw any of our pictures or videos or anything, but I sit on the floor with the pigs, every day, and they all, they climb all over me, and I go and spend time. They're not, physically or mental tortured like some poor person being, who's involved in domestic.
No, like, I do think that so I was just saying, I do think, from what I can see, you do treat the pigs well in the lead up. Like, I don't deny that you do that, but I think, wouldn't you almost say that by kind of befriending these animals and then kind of killing them unexpectedly, it's almost like a betrayal of trust between you? You've built up this thing where they see you as a more of as a friend, and then you kind of betray that trust.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, that's all. I can't. When I did it for the first time, when we did our first home slaughter, I lost a lot of sleep. I'm not, I'm not a monster. The issue that I have is that I like eating pork. Now, and this is what everybody's going to go, oh my God, it's disgusting.
Well, I think everyone knows you eat meat by this point. I think that's pretty much.
I love eating meat. And the problem is, I have actually tried being a vegetarian before. I was quite a bit younger, and I ended up in hospital because I was so anemic that actually, where I hadn't had the right things, my reason for being vegetarian was solely animals, right? Because I was under 16, and I just didn't want to eat animals. I've always loved animals, and so when we did our first 2 pigs, you know, it doesn't matter how many River Cottage books you read, you know, it doesn't make it any easier. But the point is if I want to eat it, the responsibility lies with me. And at no point is it acceptable, you know, other farms and other smallholders pass on their livestock to a slaughterman or an abattoir to kill it. And as vile as it sounds to you, the only way that I can deem it acceptable for me to eat it is for me to do it myself, because then I know that pig is not. I know that pig hasn't gone through any stress, any suffering. I watched it die instantly in front of me, and that's the only. I cannot support anybody doing anything different. I watch these videos online like everybody else does, and I cry and I think it's disgusting. And and the dairy thing is another thing. You know, we are doing a raw dairy project, you know, where we will be doing kid at goat milking and calf at cow milking on an extremely small scale, working with local autism charities to get people involved and getting milking sessions and things like that. But that's another,
it almost seems, just as an observation of it, almost seems like all the things you are doing are actually against your own morals, because you love animals, you realize it's unnecessary, you realize there's almost a betrayal in what you were doing.
Not unnecessary.
And one thing it does, just to get out of the way, obviously, just because something tastes nice, that doesn't justify an immoral act. Just to put that out there. But it does almost. And the fact you were vegetarian for animals as well is very interesting, because you know that you obviously have empathy for animals. And strangely, I've actually met someone who was very much like you, who was actually the owner of a slaughterhouse, and she was saying the exact same things to me. She gave me an entire tour of the slaughterhouse. She was saying, I want to kill these animals in this way because I don't like the industrial way they do it. I want to make sure these animals are cared for, that they go quickly. She showed us everything. Like, we watched all the CCTV of the slaughter process and everything. But ultimately, it came down to the same kind of arguments as you, but when we kind of state that it's unnecessary, that she kind of understands that. And it's almost like, it almost feels like you're kind of stuck in the habit. It's become a norm. And
it's a new thing for me. So
but I mean, meat eating in itself, meat eating has become a norm, and it's kind of,
it is. Yeah, I've worked with it. I've cooked in pubs and restaurants, done bits and pieces of catering, and it is the norm. Handling meat and eating meat, is something that I've done since a child. It might not be a necessity for you, but I deem it as a necessity for me.
Okay, actually, can you define that? Can you define what?
Nutritionally, I cannot provide the quality of ingredients that I provide for my family through what I produce here through other sources.
Okay, so how about this then? If we could source you all those things, would you stop doing it?
If you could source me absolutely everything that I get out of my meat, not out of a general diet, out of everything.
To be a nutritionally adequate diet that would be fine for you, affordable and affordable.
I don't think you'd be able to.
Well, never say never. Never say never.
Next time.
And I guess the argument I would put to that is inconvenience a good enough excuse to take someone's life? Because it's not impossible.
No, because it's not very convenient for me to do this, to be honest. It's really, really hard. And I don't make much money. And I'm often running around in the middle of the night in the pissing rain in my dressing gown, just chasing them, getting them back in the house.
Because you'd have to admit that you could order anything that you couldn't source locally from a British farm to have sent to you. Everything's available.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, do you need me to repeat? Basically, what I was going to say is you'd have to admit that everything that you would need to have a nutritionally adequate diet could be sourced, because we have access to the internet, and you'll be able to get things from other UK farms. No, from other UK farms.
what you're telling me that I can get everything that I get in the UK, including B12 and sufficient amount of B12, which obviously doesn't naturally occur.
Well, just to cover the B12 thing quickly, because I think it is an important point and it is brought up a lot with vegans. So B12 is, for some reason, it's been labelled as a vegan issue, but really it's not. It's actually just a general food issue. B12 actually comes from bacteria, and what now happens is that our food is now so sterile, whether it's with plants or even with animals, that most of the population, including a lot of livestock, especially in feedlots and factory farms, they're actually getting fed B12 supplementation. So
yes,
that
ours naturally absorb it.
Yeah.
So if grass bred and they're outdoor living.
Yeah, but it is recommended that everybody take a B12 supplement, and that is something we do have readily available to us. So B12 isn't really an issue. We can source that, whether it's from I mean, some plant-based milks do. You get nutritional yeast. A lot of products are fortified these days.
I mean, like Alpo, that's owned by like Danone and dairy.
Yeah, but I mean, you could easily make your own oat milk and fortify it yourself. You could easily make your own.
But then everyone could grow their own veg at home too, couldn't they?
They could, and I would actively encourage that as well. Yeah.
But this is the thing: is that I respect that other people haven't got the time to produce this port themselves. Other people go to work. I respect the fact that it's not easy to access these ingredients in the UK. In the UK at this time, we've got a few potatoes, a few onions, a couple of cauliflowers, and we've just had, a bit of green veg. You and my family are not going to survive British winter. Say they closed all the supermarkets, right? So they closed all the supermarkets. And they closed all the borders, right? And you can't import anything. You're not allowed to import anything, and you can't buy anything from a supermarket. Do you think that you can feed yourself completely sufficiently on what we're left with at this time of year in the UK?
Well, I mean, if you had planned, like we have freezers, we can take food and we can freeze food.
No, you're not allowed to plan.
But the thing is as well, I mean, when we're mainly talking about the importation of food, the biggest issues are when we're talking about flying things over from South America. I don't see a huge ethical issue in importing things from Europe when they can be imported by train. Realistically, France is closer to us than Scotland, so there'd be no difference in importing something from France than there would from the top of the country. In the US, importing things across the US is huge. So it's mainly when we're talking about when we're talking about planes and stuff like that.
Yeah, more like transatlantic, because actually in France and basically most of Europe, you don't get a huge amount unless it's being grown under lights or hydroponically.
Yeah, but I mean, we can get things like soy from places like Spain. We can get a lot of the stuff that we sometimes source from really far away are actually available a lot closer to home. So that stuff is all accessible, and I would argue that even the slight more impact of maybe some stuff having to come over on a cargo ship, I think that is still that impact still doesn't justify taking an animal's life when we have that as an option.
No, I mean, this is the thing, and this is, I guess, we'll always come back to that same point. For you, it is never justifiable to take an animal's life, and I guess.
Well, I wouldn't say never. I would say there are situations.
Or not. Okay, so unless it was suffering or
I would say when it's. I mean, actually, just because we never covered this at the beginning, we should have probably done it. I mean, do you actually know what the definition of veganism is? Do you actually understand what it is as a?
You want me to read it back to you, because I have watched your video.
Oh, did you? Oh, great. Okay, yeah. So So basically, just for people that are watching as well. So veganism is basically a philosophy and way of life that seeks to exclude, where possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation. So that doesn't say all exploitation. Not exploitation. All death of animals across the board in any scenario. It just means where it is possible and it's practicable to do so, we should not do it. And it's pretty much the same standard that we hold for humans. We wouldn't harm a human or do anything to a human unless it was deemed necessary to do so.
So here you go. So you've led yourself onto this one.
Okay, go for it.
So your take on abortion. So you've got.
Okay, I can answer this really easy. This is fine.
You've been asked this before.
Yeah, lots of times. So yeah, I'll answer it straight away for you. So basically, what I value is sentience. I think sentience is the important factor, because without sentience, a living being does not have an experience of the world around them. It's nothingness. So plants, for example, aren't sentient.
But you don't know that.
Oh, well, we do science.
Can be born. So a baby can be born at 6 months and still live and be okay and still pull through, right?
Yeah.
You can have an abortion in the UK up to 6 months.
Yeah.
So a baby could be that point, that very last point, a doctor will abort a baby. That baby could very well be conscious.
Okay, well, I haven't given you my position yet, so don't jump ahead yet. Yeah, so basically, sentience to me is what matters. So as far as I'm concerned, until the baby inside the womb, and I can't remember what the exact the actual cutoff date is, and I know that's a grey area where that is, but until there is brain function and until the baby has the ability to actually have a concept of any type of thought or its own existence, I see no moral issue in aborting the baby at that stage. When it is at the point where it becomes sentient, then I do believe that that baby then has moral value, and therefore we do have to then take the baby as a living being into account. And obviously then you've got to look at it on a case-by-case basis to see, because I would still say that the mother, her sentience would still trump the sentience of the baby. So if the mother was, say, in danger, for example, she would die, then obviously I would say she would be valued over the baby.
More powerful,
so basically I'm kind of almost a mixture between pro-choice and pro-life. I'm pro-choice up to the level of sentience, and then I'm pro-life except in extreme circumstances. I think if a baby has got to a point where it has conscious thought, then it needs moral consideration, and I think that view is consistent with the way I look at everyone else, and the way that I would like to be treated. I don't know what your thoughts on that is.
Well,
I mean, that doesn't mean, just to put it out there as well, that doesn't mean that is the stance for all vegans and what they think on abortion. There are pro-life abortions, there are pro-choice abortions. I have just chosen what I think is what seems like the most logical path for me. But yeah, just two votes. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, it was a few of the points that I brought up of just things that have been mentioned to me by either followers on our page or,
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
And they're going, well, what about this? And what about that? And the thing is actually a lot of the time, these conversations are had via social media and they get quite aggressive and people don't actually get the answers that they want or any answers, and it just sort of escalates. So I think it's quite interesting for people to actually get a few answers over
sure, because I don't think the majority of people understand what veganism is. I think a lot of people think veganism is a diet and we're just trying to get people to eat plants, where it's not at all. Like vegan, we only eat plants because they're not animals. We're not pro plant. We're just pro animal.
And actually, it's quite refreshing because I've met a lot of avid vegans, and actually they haven't been a very good representation for me. You've put across very well that you basically your view is that it's never acceptable to take life. Obviously we sort of agree to disagree, that obviously that I see it as a necessity for me and my family at this time. There may be a point in the future where it isn't a necessity. But at this point in time, living in the UK, I hope to not live in the UK for the rest of my life. I hope to go and live somewhere beautiful and tropical in the sunshine. And when I do, then I won't need to import all my exotic fruits.
Actually,
And I may very well stop eating meat.
Yeah, actually, this leads on to a question. Actually, I thought about asking. So one other issue I have with the kind of way of eating as being like, we're only going to eat in this kind of bubble of everything we produce ourselves. You can only be consistent with that in your own home. When you actually leave the house and go for dinner at other people's places or restaurants or go abroad, you're having to then submit to basically whatever you're given, because majority of the places can't tell you where these animals were from, how they were raised, and you have no idea of doing it. So would you say that to be completely consistent with your view, that realistically outside of your house you would have to eat vegan because you don't know where these animals have come from?
You know what? I pretty much order, if I go to a restaurant or if I go, outside, I will order something vegetarian on the menu. I normally, maybe not vegan, possibly not vegan. And actually, one of my, major guilts is cheese. And I struggle with cheese, and I would like to be more ethical on that front, But then I think, we all do, you probably more than others, but we all do, what we can. And I'm working my way through it, because 5 years ago I was eating very differently. Cheese is probably my downfall, but other than that, if I go to a restaurant or a pub or somewhere budget cafe or very rarely, unless it actually says where the meat, for example, Primrose Her pork, or if it says on there that I know that farm and I know and I know how they, but even then, to be honest, it's normally disappointing if I eat meat from anywhere else, because nothing measures up to what we produce to ourselves.
Carry on. Sorry, carry on. I'll jump in a sec.
The main reason that I don't order meat when I'm out, and I eat a lot of squashes, butternut squash and roasted veg, and we don't eat a lot of meat, and this is the thing, is it's not sustainable for everybody to carry on eating meat the way they are. But if everybody actually cut down and ate responsibly, and then it would be a completely different ball game. I mean, we as meat eaters, I'm ashamed to say, that we fund, these cheap crap, industrial farms, this rubbish meat that's processed and reformed and, but the problem is, we as meat eaters fund that. Well, you as vegans fund the other side of it. So the thing is the vegans who aren't eating whole foods like you are, the vegans who are eating meat alternatives, I've got single friends who just eat for themselves. They'll go, and dig something out of the freezer, a vegan product, and they might not be eating all the nutritionally balanced things that you are, but I mean, it's the same for meat eaters. I've got friends who can go and buy a McDonald's burger, and can do it, you can do it responsibly or not. But the point is, is collectively, we should just all stop buying this crap, and supporting these companies that, that are destroying us. And basically, the smaller, the better. I mean, I don't mind if you eat meat or if you eat eggs or if you don't eat any of it and you don't eat, and you don't have anything to do with any of it. But I think the thing is it's just, it's the promoting the little people and the small farmer and the local person. And, and it's asking the questions about the produce, whether it's veg or, meat based or dairy based, it's questioning, all the time. Where has it come from? How is it processed? What's it got in it? And I think if anything, at least all of this, I guess there's some, valid information that everybody sort of takes away from it. And we should eat less meat, we should have less of it. But, you know, for me, it's definitely quality over quantity. And, you know, and I feel like when I get to that point where I haven't eaten meat for a week, I feel like I need it. I feel like, you know, in my body that I feel, you know, like iron and everything, you know, I just feel a bit like weak and without it. And so maybe I don't make up, you know, what I need in the meantime, you know, the rest of the week. But you know, I always, you know, I feel better as a result of it. I don't need to eat it. If I ate meat every day, then I'd feel awful, you know. And this is the thing, is that there's such extreme portrayals on social media, and you're right. You know, everybody's sort of missing the point, and everybody's sort of missing the point of veganism, and everybody's sort of, you know, it's just sort of all got a bit short-sighted, you know, and they're probably, you know, there's probably such a thing as a true vegan, you know, and then someone who it is just a diet, you know, and it might just be a fad, and it might just be a
Yeah, I
diet,
mean
you know.
that is a definite thing. There are a lot of people that, you know, that they just eat a plant-based diet, but they don't necessarily subscribe to the philosophy. You know, they don't care about the other aspects of things. They do it mainly
Yeah.
for health reasons. They do it because
So
it's
they
healthy for
probably
them.
give you a poor representation, I guess, which is like what, you know, the you know, industrial farms do
Well,
for.
I think what it is ultimately what, like kind of going back to what we spoke about a little while ago. Ultimately, you know, because vegans are fighting for, you know, the rights of living beings, the argument's always going to be a very passionate one. It's always going to be a very fiery, a very like, this needs to stop because animals are being harmed and we want this to stop. And I think that because it is not seen as a social norm to be vegan, and this, even though veganism's been around for a long time, the whole subject of animal rights really hasn't been addressed majorly in the media, especially until the last kind of, you know, 10 years or so. It's something that, you know, it's like going back to the days of the suffragettes and the women's fighting for women's rights, and people going, that's ridiculous, what are you talking about, women shouldn't have rights. And they were probably seen in exactly the same way that vegans are today, in the fact that they're battling something which is seen as normal, and they're trying to battle against the status quo and everything, and they were probably seen as extremists back then. But I think that you know, unethical practices will only live for so long. Let's say, what's the phrase? Injustice won't last forever. And I do think eventually we will move to a more kinder world for animals. I do think we will get there.
Yeah, I do hope so, you know, on so many levels, you know, and but you know, it's the industrial farming, you know, that is really, it's given, you know, everything such a bad name.
Well, actually,
and
I'd actually like to talk to you about the industrial farming, because obviously that's something that we can agree on. That factory farming is abhorrent, disgusting, and it should be shut down forever. It's horrific. I mean, with the organization that I run, obviously, you know, we deal with undercover investigations. I've seen a lot of things inside. I've actually been inside factory farms in the past as well, and they're really not nice. So one thing I would like to actually propose to you, okay, this is a bit of a proposition on where we can agree on stuff. One thing that I see is there are a movement of farmers that are against factory farming, and if anywhere, that is where we can both agree on. What I don't see, though, and maybe you can explain why this is that when exposés of factory farms come to light, farmers do not join the vegans in condemning these places. I never see vegans them share these investigations, condemn the farms, condemn the farmers for what they're doing. And that is something that I think that should be actively done, because even though we disagree on the killing of animals as a whole, what we do agree on is that animals should be treated, you know, humanely in the way that we each think. So this should be somewhere where we should be fighting together, and I don't see that happening. So I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I know it's hard to I guess pick them out as individuals, you know, all that's a farmer, you know, fighting for that, or that's a, you know, standing up. But I mean, I'm sort of one of many, and like I said, we do such small scale, you know, it's hardly, we do more of a community based project than we do produce, you know. It's more about getting people here and educating people and getting them involved, you know, rather than, you know, producing. But there are lots of, you know, lots of people, for example, at school, at the local primary school, you know, who all sort of farm or are part of, you know, big farming families. And you'd never know that they were farmers. You know, a lot of people support and share. I often share these horrific videos of chicken farms, and you know, because really that is, you know, that's why we do what we do, so that people have another option and they don't have to buy this stuff. It's unfortunate that the British law states and makes it so difficult for us to do it on a small scale. British law makes it so that if you want to sell it, you have to hand it over to someone at a slaughterhouse. I'm not allowed to sell my meat to my friends or my family. The only person that can eat it is me and, you know, who lives in this house. Because in the UK, everybody used to be able to have a pig. Everybody used to be able to eat their pig and they could share it around a dinner table. And now it is such that the guidelines say that you have to run it through the system, and you have to, you know, and you have to complete the paperwork, and it has to be rinsed with disinfectant, and it has to, you know, and all these, you know, safety measures and all. So it's sort of taken it and made it into something else. I think the reason that people, I was just coming back to just what you were saying earlier, you know, and that people get really passionate, you know, because obviously it's a life, you know, and I think the only reason, you know, I think there are a lot of old school farmers, you know, that is not us, you know. There are a lot of traditional farmers that I don't agree with all of their practices. You know, there are a lot of, you know, the attitude towards animals in a lot of scenarios, and there's sort of ignorance in this, you know, they're stupid, you know, they don't know. Well, that's, you know, I don't agree with that at all. But I feel, you know, there are a lot of especially young farmers, people trying to do something different. You know, the calf at cow dairy, which I'm sure you've heard of, the ethical dairy. So they've just done like a 3-year, you know, done it proper scientific study on calf at cow milking. And as you're probably aware, it's so disgusting, the industry, you know, that they take the bull calves away after their first milk, or they take all the calves away after their first milk. Bull calves get shot at birth or get shipped on a lorry over to Europe or whatever. I mean, it's absolutely awful. So the fact that, you know, somebody is actually making a step when it is not going to be particularly profitable to do so, to go, actually, no, we're going to do it like this, you know, and we're going to do a study so that everybody else can use this method too, you know, and things like that just fill me with joy, because although, you know, I understand, you know, from your point of view, but I've got to look at things like that, and that's like, you know, it's baby steps, not baby steps towards obviously being plant-based. But, you know, if these things, I don't buy that milk, and my friends don't buy that milk because it's too expensive, because no one does it, because you've got to, you know, they will only use biodegradable packaging throughout, and they will not compromise on any of, you know, any of their points that they're making. And I absolutely, you know, salute them for doing that, because it's going to be, you know, they've gone from having a dairy that they were running as a normal dairy and making money out of, and they've taken a step back to do something, you know, that's actually, you know, quite innovative, you know, in the dairy industry in the UK. And I think things like that, you know, it's basically, you know, when you say, you know, that people are, you know, people get passionate because it's over a life. I feel like from the flip side, I feel like, you know, the farmers are getting basically that this whole like vegan movement has like rubbed everyone up the wrong way, and sort of like, and the BBC and that, you know, sort of has sort of portrayed it in a way that I don't think is really accurate. You know, it's a bit extreme. It hasn't come across in the right way. It's made everyone like just, you know,
I guess a question, you know, I guess a question I'd like to ask though, and this seems like a really blunt question, but you'll understand why I've asked it. What is more extreme, fighting for animals not to die, or killing them?
I don't what you when you say extreme,
because people see basically
because I'm saying people being extreme.
Yeah, because people see veganism as extreme, but ultimately what we're trying to do is to stop violence, where the other side is actually being violent towards the animals. So I don't see people shouting and screaming, even if they did that, which I don't always think is the most effective way. But even people at their most angry, I don't see as extreme as the action that they oppose.
No, and I'm not saying you know, as an individual extreme. I'm saying the stuff that they've broadcast, like meat destroying our planet, how to steal a pig and influence people, you know, headlines, obviously to wind people up, obviously to grab, you know, that's
well, that's just the media, isn't it? Clickbait. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but the thing is obviously it's shown one side of the argument, and from a farming community side, this is their lives, this is their livelihood. If they can't sell their produce, their family doesn't eat. If they haven't, you know, and we're not talking about like long term, you know, when we can grow everything hydroponically and we've got the facilities and we're talking about now, if their livestock doesn't sell at the price that they need it to, what about them?
Yeah, and that's the thing.
You know,
I do actually have sympathy for farmers. I really do, because you know, and the thing is, it goes along with my, you know, with my ethics in that it wouldn't be right of me to be compassionate to animals and not have also compassion to human beings as well. And what I would like to see, to be honest, is the government realize that there's a shift being made and them actively trying to help farmers into transitioning into plant-based things, because that is where the industry is going. And I think that farmers should be helped. The last thing I really want to see, as much as I disagree with what they're doing, the last thing I want is a load of people not to be able to feed their families, to end up homeless, to not have money. That does not generate a good society. That is not good for anybody. I want to see farmers helped to transition away from an unethical system to a more ethical system where they can still generate money. And there are some schemes, not enough of them, but there are a few starting. Like there's the Grow Green report, which is the Vegan Society. They actually took, I think it was a dairy farmer. I think they managed to convert him over to growing fava beans and made his business more profitable, which is really great. Actually, there's a really good film you might actually like. I think it's called, I'm trying to remember what the number is now. It's 70 something. I think it's like 73 or something. 73 cows. Yeah. It's about a cow farmer who transitions. That is what I would like. That is what I would like to see more of. I don't want a society where because you know, there are so many people that work in animal agriculture in the UK. There are so many, and just them losing all their jobs and suffering is just fixing one problem and creating another. What we need to do is we need to fix it across the board, and we need to support farmers in a way to transition. So I'm very much for that, and I do have sympathy with farmers, because all I think about farmers is I'm like, well, you've been brought up into this industry, like you've been brought up in, not yourself, a lot of farmers have, it's heritage, like you said, so they've just been brought up into it, and it's not their fault that they work in an industry which is unethical. So we need to help them to do that, and hopefully, as this plant-based and vegan movement grows, the farmers will get more support. And I would be a first person to put my hand in my pocket if there was a fund to help farmers, and I would happily donate to help farmers transition. So that's where I see the future going anyway.
No, I mean, my only concern, in that kind of scenario would be the animals and that transitional period. There just needs to be a lot of finance there, because if you're losing, obviously there needs to be that in between point, and you get to a point where you're not gonna, the animals aren't gonna be worth anything, and the people of which they are only a product, they're not a living thing, then what happens to them at this stage? What happens?
Well, this is a common question as well. What happens to the animals is a big question. And ultimately, a lot of them are going to get, you know, a lot of these farms are going to do one last round of slaughter and sell the products, and then no other animals will be bred into existence. And ultimately, could that end in the extinction of some of these breeds? Possibly, yeah. But I would argue that these animals are not even natural animals. None of them have ever existed in the wild. They're purely domesticated, but their original wild forms do still exist. We do still have wild cows. We do still have the red jungle fowl. We do still have, you know, the different animals around, you know, whatever it is. So even if these animals did die out, which, to be honest, I don't want to see, in a way, because and I think it is purely for selfish reasons. You know, I like cows, I like pigs, I like kind of having them around. You know, I would like to think that we can find a way to, you know, mutually exist with some sort of arrangement. I don't know whether we can give them land for them to. I know that's a bit of a dream scenario. I don't really know the solution, but ultimately, I think that, you know, either way, it ends an unethical industry, and I don't think that it would be a massive thing if they did go extinct, because they never existed anyway. And I would argue the same thing, even things like dogs. Like, let's take an example, the pug. So as you were saying about pug, you know, dogs earlier, that they're bred. Yeah, they're bred with so many problems, aren't they? They've got breathing problems. They can't walk. Why are we breeding?
Sad.
Yeah, it's terrible. So why are we breeding these animals into existence that are destined to suffer? Like the meat chickens, obviously they grow so fast they don't even have a good life. Sheep now grow so much wool that they can't live without human interference.
They die.
Yeah, a lot of these animals, you know, they're mutants of their original form, and they suffer because of it. So I think that it's almost more ethical to allow those unnatural species to die out and work on conserving the natural species that are out there and making sure that the future is great for them.
Wow,
it's a lot to take in there.
And we can always come back to a few of those points, because it was really interesting.
Yeah, sure. If you ever want to have a chat about the pet thing or something sometime, I've got lots to say about pets.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm sure that a few people will be saying to me tomorrow, why didn't you say this? Why didn't you say that?
that always happens.
About that.
You always happens.
I would have forgotten something, definitely.
No, that's fine. I'm more than happy to have another chat at any time. I think, you know, I do think that these chats are valuable, and you know, I do try and actively do this. Like, you know, like I said, I've had I went, you know, some vegans will probably hate me for this, but I went to the pub with a slaughterhouse owner for like 2 hours and chatted about everything, you know, went into depth about what they did. I the whole tour of the slaughterhouse, everything. You know, I chatted to a Vancouver dairy farmer for probably about 5 hours on a flight. Yeah, so I think
people would
carry on.
Respect you. You know, there would be, you would get, you know, I genuinely respect you for doing that, you know, because I feel like a lot of people, whether it's one way or the other, are very closed-minded. And I think, you know, what a large reason we do what we do is to talk to people about what we do, and obviously why you do what you do. You know, knowledge is power. Exactly. You know, and the more we know about it all, then, you know, the better off we are as a result of it. So,
exactly. And ultimately, if we're, you know, from like the vegans' perspective as well, if we want to get to where we want to get, we have to talk to farmers. We have to find out. We have to find out what these people's situations are. How can we help them? You know, what can we do to make the things better? And, you know, and what can we do to improve the lives of these animals while this transition happens? And you can't do that without communicating. I think this, you know, I think it's invaluable to have these conversations and to be civil about it. You know, and as much as, you know, we are going to categorically disagree on some points, it is good, like I said, to also find out where we do agree, which is why I bought the factory farm.
On,
exactly, which is why I mentioned the factory farming. Like, I do personally think that there needs to be a bigger push from farmers who are against factory farming to call out these farms as much as we do. They should be sharing these exposés. They should be damning them, because, you know, there's something we both disagree with. It's something that both ultimately gets us closer to the cause that we individually believe in, whether we agree on what that is or not. And I would like to see more of it. I would like to see a Farmers Against Factory Farming page where people share exposés. They work with animal rights organizations to go, this place is horrible. But I don't see it. All I tend to see is farmers standing up for them and being like, you shouldn't have gone onto their land and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, we went on their land because the animals were living in their own feces and dying.
No, it's disgusting, and there's no excuse for that. And I think, you know, for me, those people, and on that kind of scale, that doesn't constitute farming. You know, farmer is someone who's up in the middle of the night with their animals because they're sick, and they're, you know, they're sat in the rain in a field with a sheep because it's, you know.
Well, I guess if there's something to take away from this conversation, if there's something that I think that, you know, like, I would say go vegan. If you want to try going for a vegan challenge, I would love to let you do that, and we can try and help you do it. So you can say, oh, if you're up for that. But also, I would like to see you step up to that thing that you say you're against, and show more of that. Like, I don't know if you were aware, there was a huge free range egg farm exposed only 2 days ago, which was RSPCA approved, British Lion approved. It was a supplier to a lot of the major supermarkets.
It's all a load of rubbish, you know. They are, unfortunately, our laws are really good. You know, our animal laws are really good.
I would question that, but carry on.
Those are my inverted commas. Where are they? Those are my inverted commas, right? But the RSPCA is a load of, you know, the certifications mean nothing. You know, as you know, you've seen the videos. The RSPCA, the red tractor, the whole, you know, everyone's going to hate me for saying this, but it's all a load of rubbish.
No, it is, I'm glad you say that, and I wish more farmers would be honest and come out and say that they don't mean anything. Yeah. No,
and you know, it's a con, because people look to that to trust that. You know, they look to the RSPCA or the red tractor. I trust that stamp. You know, that means it's okay. And like you say, they're being, you know, uncovered all the time. All these, you know, the animal in awful conditions.
But I guess what I would have to say, though, before the vegans lynch me, is that despite factory farming being bad, killing an animal when it's unnecessary, regardless of the scenario, we still see as unethical. And I have to say that because I don't.
You will never. You will never, you know, see a pig like I see a pig. You know, it doesn't mean, you know, that we can't be united on, you know, other fronts. And like you say, you know, it should be, maybe it would be more influential if more farmers did, you know, take a stand. Maybe it would mean more if it was farmers taking a stand against, you know, factory farming and these things.
Well, I think everyone should be able to stand up for what is seen as cruelty outside of the legal system. You know, the blatant abuse. You know, as much as vegans think that, you know, it's all exploitation, just in a legal sense, everyone should be against the clear abuses, which are seen. You know, everyone gets on board with. I do think that needs to happen. I think, you know, farmers need to be on vegan side for, I would probably say, 95% of what we stand for, because all the rest of the things you think about it, diet's one aspect. You know, we're against using animals for entertainment, using animals for sport, you know, using animals for scientific testing, using animals for all these other reasons, which I think majority of people can get on board with. I think where we have the disagreement really is just when it comes to be honest, it's not even normally dairy and eggs, it's just meat. Really, that's the bit. That's the bit where we fundamentally disagree on. But everything else, I think everyone else should get on board, because if everyone does care for animals, why not join us with every other issue that we are for, and we can argue about the other bits, as we go.
And this is like, again, is just labels, isn't it? And it's really, it's created by the media, and it's and it causes, there are anti-vegan pages and anti-farmer pages, and
Although I would say I've got to call you out on one little thing. Okay, you use the hashtag anti-vegan movement in one of your articles.
Yeah,
you see,
I am anti-vegan. I'm against it because
the thing is realistically you're not. All you're against is because you think about it, we've had this conversation, and I would say the majority of the conversation we've actually agreed on. So the majority of what veganism stands for, you actually agree with. It's only a very small percentage where you don't.
Yeah, but that label, it takes all of that percentage. And this is what I'm saying, is that, veganism covers all of those bases. And I believe that we're wasting a lot of products are being put in incinerators, and it might not be directly responsible, it might not be because of you, but because of a movement which actually a lot of people aren't educated enough on, like we were saying earlier, there's like a true vegan, and then there's someone who's picked it up, for veganry as a diet. And to be honest, when I say anti-vegan, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I hate this. I understand, and I salute you for your work with animal rights, and I respect the fact that you sat with.
So you're actually more. So realistically, you're just more against the corporate. You're basically just against the corporate food system more than anything.
Yeah.
So that's not an anti-vegan thing. That's an anti, corporate food. You need to change that hashtag to anti-corporate food.
Okay, I'll change it. I think, to be honest, I've never, I haven't been able to tackle half these subjects when I've approached people about them, because it's ended up in an argument. And so it's been nice to be able to get a few answers.
Great. I'm glad you got some value out of this. This is great.
Yeah, and I hope a few people on our page have watched, at least a little bit of it, because I think a lot of people feel the same. And I think that if everybody was just a bit more open about it all, then we probably wouldn't have this animosity. And
I think ultimately what we're doing, what we've done is start a discussion. We've got people talking, and hopefully this live stream will get people talking again and going further into the subjects, and and that's the only way we're ever going to get anywhere, is by prompting that discussion and doing it in a manner where we can actually discuss the points and not just talk past each other. Because if we just do that, we're not going to get anywhere. Great. Well, we should probably wrap it up. We've been 2 hours. We've got an hour over the limit.
I thought it was a struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, but I really appreciate you coming on. A lot of farmers, they don't want to come and do these things because they think that they're just going to get shouted at. And I'm always kind of like, no, I'm happy to have a civil conversation. But
I feel passionate, about what we do, and I feel passionate about a lot of the things that you do as well, But I think there's more points we can cover, a bit of carbon sequestration, and a bit of nutrition, and I can come back with some more facts.
you know exactly where I'd come to, though, don't you? Would you know my argument for those? Yeah. I'll just come back to the ethical thing.
Coffee now.
But great stuff. Well, no worries. Thank you. And if you do want to have another chat anytime, then please just let me know, and more than happy to dive into a conversation. Or if you know anyone who wants to come on and have a chat as well, I can get up to 6 people on here at a time. So
brilliant.
Yeah, so we can always have if you know other people that want to come on as well, that more than happy to set up some more chats. I think it's really constructive. So really appreciate your time.
Great, thanks, Chris.
Great stuff. Thank you, and have a good evening. Bye. Thank you. Okay, everyone. So that was an interesting conversation. And now I think I will open the stream up if anyone wants to actually come and chat. I'll post the link. Obviously, I can only have 6 people in here at any one time, but if anyone wants to hop on and kind of maybe give your thoughts on anything, again, let's keep everything civil, some good conversation. But yeah, if anyone wants to hop in and have a chat about things, feel free. So I'll put the link in the chat now. Obviously, if you're not contributing anything, you're gonna get 6 people in here. I might have to chuck you out. But yeah, let's hop in and have a chat. If there's any points you feel you wanted something should be said or anything like that. And this is from either side. Whether you're vegan or non-vegan that wants to come on, feel free. Yeah, we'll stay on for maybe like another 20 minutes or something. Or if anyone wants to ask any questions, if they don't actually want to come onto the stream but just want to ask questions from the chat, you are more than welcome to. So yeah, I think I need some water. That was a lot of talking, but I hope I hope you guys enjoyed that discussion. Oh, longest vegan dog was 28, I believe. Stephen Anthony, right? So let me add him into the stream. Hello there, you all right?
What's up? All right, this is crazy, dude. I mean, could you imagine what's going on right now? Like, what's happening? How does this work? I mean, it's just too much. We have so much on the tip of our finger. The world is going to change before our eyes. Have you heard of Vegan Justice League at all?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay, so Vegan Justice League, they're talking about, like you're saying, government support. How we have, I'm not sure what it is in the EU. We have all these subsidies, all these bailouts in America. So you're talking billions of dollars here in the United States that are basically going to these mega farms to bail them out of their, overproduction. So we have billions of pounds just in a warehouse that goes bad and then dumped. So all that money could be put into farming transition. The only thing that's going to make that work is to have the paperwork, the legislation, capitalists, the legislators to put that through. And the only way that happens is you have to hire a lobbyist to make that, pliable. And that's only between you and I and the next person to invest in that lobbyist. So it would be Vegan Justice League. I'm not sure if it's for the UK as well, but I don't see why it wouldn't apply.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to post any links in the chat.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'd love to actually look more into that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's just such a massive amount of money that goes to these corporations that are basically, holding these funds because no one else is claiming them. You're talking trillions of dollars in taxes that are basically overlooked by the mass majority of people. Have you ever seen the question mark guy that says you can get you can get a loan or a grant from the government? You just have to apply. Have you seen that yet?
No.
Okay, so it's big in the United States as well. It's kind of gimmicky. It's kind of catchy. It's just a commercial, and the guy comes on. He's got his question mark suit on, and he's like, dancing and talking about how just apply for the government loan, government grants. And there's, all this tax money that you can get for all your projects and all this for free. You just have to apply. Well, that's what's happening with big ag. They have lobbyists. They have the big lobby is about, I think it's 1% of the population. And our population in America of vegans is around 8%, according to Vegan Justice League. So if we just have 10% of the vegans in America, not including the UK with your system there, it's just a matter of time. I mean, we're sitting here talking like, has this ever been the case, like in the history of humanity, to be able to just like, let's have a video chat at a spare moment like this? These things took like lots of time to get organized, and we're just doing it at a whim. I mean, I was just literally watching you on my TV in my den, like this is like some huge production, but I am talking to you on my cell phone. It's like, it's not a big deal whatsoever. And we're communicating these huge ideas, trillions of dollars at our fingertips, as long as we just apply for it, be civil, like you're saying, write it on a piece of paper, get someone, a professional lobbyist, like you would go to court, you'd have a lawyer, you're supporting the system by inserting your cash into the machine. You're not shaking the machine. You're paying your way into the machine, and then the machine will then.
I guess with what you're saying, then, I mean, do you think especially in the US, then, do you think that vegans should be focusing on this? This fund, then, is that something that we should be putting a lot? Because like I said, I haven't heard of this, and if there's a lot of money there that can, this seems like a wasted opportunity that we're not really taking advantage of.
Absolutely, you'll have all these mega vegan corporation or vegan groups, companies that are saying, hey, we're saving all these animals, but in the bigger sense of it, we're actually not. All those animals that aren't being consumed by us is being stored in a warehouse somewhere, because if the bubble bursts and we all just decide, okay, we're going to start consuming animals again, they're buffering our decisions. They had a projected idea of how the world would be, and it's not that, but they have to continue on because they're just so invested, and they're like a broken record. They're going to keep doing it until something interferes, and we are the interference. But we on the streets, it's not loud enough to them because they only work through paper, and we're not putting in our paper. We're not feeding the machine. So that's where us having this conversation and getting the links out there and talking about what's the next step, and it's basically what it boils down to. You put your money where it's supposed to go. That's the big argument here, is like when you're talking to all these farmers and just random people on the street, buy this instead of that. It's as simple as that. But if you don't know, then how are you to do that? And that's where we come in and say, okay, you can do that, and also you need to do this as well at the same time. So yes, buy this instead of that, but also you need to invest in getting all your tax money out of the same system. So once you do that, it's a full circle, and then we won't have this billions of pounds that are being stored and then wasted, and then billions of dollars being supporting the very system that you're against. So
yeah. Actually, something you said just reminded me of a point that I was going to bring up, which was about when we're talking about there's a lot of big corporate releasing plant-based foods and stuff like that. They're not necessarily the most kind of ethical plant-based foods, and I think one of the things I kind of failed to point out is that realistically that is only a temporary thing, because what we're basically trying to do is develop a market for plant-based foods, and as that market develops, the more ethical sides of that plant-based market will then be favored by the public, and those other ones will be pushed to either become more ethical or be pushed out of the market completely. So realistically, the situation we have now, where people are buying a lot of junk food and all that kind of stuff, is it's a temporary blip of unethical plant farming that will ultimately lead to a more ethical one by building a market for plant-based products in the first place.
It's synchronicity, because we're literally doing something that is never done in the history of mankind, is be able to use some kind of like little machine to talk to someone on the other end face to face, and then at the same time express it through all of eternity through the internets, and having it on record and live, and it's just intense, the amount of influence that's being broadcasted constant, and it's just a matter of time. Like, everyone on the planet knew Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter instantaneous before he even landed. They're already putting on the news, this guy just died because the helicopter was flying too low, and then so it's just in the same line of reasoning. We're all opportunistic, and like you said, people are being raised in these situations, and we're not in those situations, and we're being opportunistic, saying, okay, we see a different situation here than what you're seeing, and we are going to take the most opportune moment to take advantage. And that's all this is. This is all what we're doing, is just capitalizing on the scenarios that were presented. And here we are, communicating with the world live, instantaneous, just on a whim, like, hey, join us, here we are, and here we are. Like,
yeah, I mean, I guess this was one of the big things compared to any sort of justice issue in the past, is the fact that information can no longer be hidden. Everything is accessible to the world in a heartbeat. Where when we were trying to fight for the rights of, say, women or people of color in the past, the speed that information would travel would be far slower. And I believe if that situation was in a technological age, it probably would have been sorted out so much faster.
And it's funny because as soon as I came on, before I got on the live stream with you, I was watching, and instantaneous, I got the impression that both of y'all were on the vegan end. And then as the conversation went on, I found that she was talking about still consuming animals. And then by the end of the conversation, you were in that moment of saying, okay, you are the choice. Don't hold it back. Don't say, tomorrow. It's right now. It's just as much as your life as is theirs. Who's holding you back? And at the end of it, we have to meet them halfway, just like you were saying. It's really up to everybody at the same time, but ultimately, it's at the hands of the being that's behind it. So if she's willing to keep doing it, then it's going to keep happening. We can't intervene and tell her not to. We can tell her, but it's up to her own consciousness to say no.
Exactly, and that's the kind of thing. I mean, you can only push people so far. All you can do is, I mean, you can't turn anyone vegan. All you can do is plant the seeds and hope that they come to their own realization. And sometimes it's kind of better to leave it on a point of, right, we have a fundamental disagreement, but at least you understand the argument against yours now, and you can go away and process that. And I don't know if do you watch Michelle Lowe?
No,
the YouTuber. So she was talking about a big thing called a psychological thing called the sleeper effect, where basically you can plant seeds with someone at one stage, and obviously throughout learning more and more information, they may eventually change down the line. Because the thing is, as much as we want people to go vegan now, which we all do, if I had the choice to make people go vegan right away, I would.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I just know that because of social conditioning and the fact that what we are doing to animals has become such a norm, we're almost not battling with the person, we're battling with their conditioning of their brain, which is a far more difficult thing to do than just to tell people don't do that. We need to basically rewire their brain, and to do that isn't always something you can do immediately. But the best thing to do is give their brain the tools to decipher and let them eventually come to their own conclusion. Interestingly, like you just said, you came on and thought that she was vegan because a lot of the things she said were very much in line with what we think as vegans. She also agreed that what she did was unnecessary. She understands it's unnecessary. Her basic argument was, in a sense, is it's easier, and she thinks it's better for the environment than buying from corporate things. But I wouldn't say any of those were ever an excuse to kill. Like, for example, put it in the human context. Humans are the biggest environmental impactor of all time, but we wouldn't argue that that we should kill all the humans because eating Beyond Burgers is it also causes harm to the environment or anything like that, would we? You've got to look at the individual, the ethics of the action before you look at the ethics of the consequence of that action. I think that's where she missed it. It's almost an argument from practicality, but the argument isn't principled. Your argument because the outcome is favorable to you, but you're kind of ignoring the ethics of the action itself. Does that make sense?
And my, it's kind of like how I was saying earlier. It's just you're like you're saying as well, is that it's just brought into you, and as a child, when you see these things, you kind of have your own mentality of how things are. You want to work things out for yourself and have others as an instrument or a tool to reiterate those ideas, so you can kind of pick and choose what you see as what the world really means to you. And when you have reinforcement that causes you to, harden your stance and those, those actions, then anything can, in your own mind, make sense to be okay or not okay. And like I say, I mean, if we didn't have the position that we do, they would feel as if nothing is it is out of the ordinary, except for the fact that it's happening, and that's at that moment. And then the rest of the world around it, it reinforces that moment. So that's where you get that negative impact of like, it's going to continue on because the world enforces it. So you have that that what do you call it, cognitive dissonance of continuing on, even though in the back of your mind you're like, there's something else, that we're missing something here. Luckily that we can intervene and say, well, by the way, you were saying this, and we're letting you know that we're here to support you to not have to anymore. And that's, you're talking billions and trillions. I'm not sure what it is for UK and over in Europe, but we're talking trillions of dollars that we are literally just throwing to these people that are only taking it because no one else is. So as long as we just take our money that we have in our hands that we can actually control and put it towards getting the money that we have already put in and just not getting anything out of it, that's when we get control of that money again. But until then, we got to find the right place to put that money. And Vegan Justice League over here in the United States, and I'm sure the more we look into this, it's pretty much the same scenario everywhere. It's a international bankers, they're just trying to keep the value of the dollar, value of all these currencies up. And until we intervene, they're just going to keep taking it because no one else is willing to claim it. So it's like that. Have you ever seen Futurama, the TV show Futurama?
Yeah.
Remember the anchor, the alien anchor? He's like, who dares be a millionaire? Like, the most scariest thing on this world is to actually be wealthy. It's like, people are afraid of heights. People are afraid of the potential of really what life could really mean. Like, dreams are very intense, and then you wake up, you're like, oh, I want to go back to sleep. But it's only a minuscule moment of your life, and then the rest of it, you get to like savor that little dream that you had that could be potentially real, but like, that's super scary that you have that ability to live that kind of existence. It's just and how do you get there? Like, if
you could post a link to the Vegan Justice League in the chat
sure.
for us, that would be great. I was actually going to wrap up. Obviously, we got new persons entered the chat, so I can stick around for another 10 minutes or so.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if. Oh, actually, was there anything last thing you wanted to say there, Stephen? About could you? Oh, he's gone. Okay. Yeah, I got to say, I kind of cut him off a little bit there. So sorry about that, Stephen. If you wanted to say anything else, please feel free to put it in the chat. The fat vegan we've got in now. You don't look very fat for the fat vegan.
There's a belly that's quite well hidden. The name kind of stems from a photo that's knocked about on my Instagram.
Okay.
And there's like a whole thing behind it. But there was something said earlier on about kind of like planting seeds, and it reminded me of something that I heard a while ago, and I think it's kind of what's happening at the moment. And a while ago, I remember hearing about a study basically where there were people in like a hospital waiting room,
right?
And basically there was like one woman in there, and actors went in, and every time a beep happened, like the actors like stood up.
Oh yeah, I've seen the experiment. Yeah, I know the one you mean.
Yeah. And then the lady that wasn't part of the experiment eventually started doing it as well. And I almost feel that's kind of what's happening at the moment with the vegan movement and kind of the way things are progressing, purely down to the fact that obviously in the beginning it's like, oh, should I be doing what everyone else is doing and following on? Like the woman in the experiment, she's obviously a bit unsure. But like now more people are moving over to genuine vegan living, the genuine abstention of use of animals. More and more people are actually kind of going, well, actually no, I can do this, and there's less of a kind of a worry that it may well be the wrong thing to do, and we're almost the same flow that we had before, where people are just going with the flow and kind of doing things just because it's the norm. We're almost kind of creating a modern version of that with veganism, which I think can only be a positive thing.
Totally, yeah. That's actually a really good. I'm gonna remember that experiment thing, because that's a really good way of explaining what's happening, isn't it? One of us is standing up, and we're standing up all the time, and then everyone else is slowly going, why are they standing up? But yeah, we're standing up for animals. That's what we're doing. We got the microphone. Are you there? I've unmuted Al. Hello? Got someone added in. I don't know if you can hear us. You've come onto the stream.
I can hear something in the background. I can hear them. But...
Yeah. Someone's rustling. I don't know, maybe they've disappeared. I'm not sure. Oh, sure. Yeah, message in the chat if you need to be unmuted. I'll mute you for now.
But yeah, no, like when it was mentioned earlier on, I just thought that's like one of the things that's kind of happening at the moment. Yeah, and now it is because I always, as much as the kind of capitalist movement surrounding like vegan KFC and for a lot of people and a lot of people that hold kind of animals as the highest level of like as we should, I almost feel as though these corporations like KFC and like Burger King have changed their recipe as well to actually make it a vegan burger and things like that. They're almost the other people coming in and standing up and going, actually, this is okay. They're almost like people, look at the RSPCA and the red tractor labels. Now people are seeing these companies going, oh, well, KFC are going, well, we've got a vegan burger for people to try. It's amazing. Try it. Everyone's now going, that's almost like the modern red tractor in a way, but like a better, what will actually lead to a better version of it. And
right,
and
yeah,
that's what you mean. Morally and ethically corrupt version.
Yeah, that's what you mean. Like, yeah, vegan approved and not RSPCA approved, basically. the way I see all the things like the KFC burger and stuff, though, is to be honest, I only really see them as they're kind of temporary fixes. They're there at the moment to get people. I think what I kind of discussed a moment ago about. Yeah. They're there to get people into the plant-based market, and all it's going to take is for another company to come along and be just as convenient but be more ethical. And everyone's going to go, well, I'm not going to buy from them. I'm going to buy from the more ethical one. And then that then pushes KFC to become more ethical. And you've got that battle of becoming more and more and more ethical. So I think almost, I feel like with KFC and Burger King, we're using them. We're not kind of being like, oh, they're working with us. We are using them to get where we want to go. Eventually, if they don't change, we are going to ditch them. As soon as there is a fully vegan takeaway on every single high street with a vegan burger, why is any vegan or anyone going to go into KFC and buy their vegan burger? Like, no one is. It's going to push them to become more ethical. So that's kind of how I see it. It's a temporary fix to get people interested. And they're actually helping us get where we want to go, and at the same time destroying their own businesses. That's the way I see it anyway.
It was quite interesting the other day, actually, because I was coming back from work and I was like, do you know what, I'm going to pop in and grab myself like a vegan like KFC burger. I was just like, let's go. And there was a guy in there that was getting something for like his kid. He was like a bodybuilder, and he was like, oh, you're allowed like one cheat day a week, and it was like his cheat day, and he was deciding whether or not to buy anything. And I was like, well, if you still want the KFC flavor and the taste, and I was like really trying to push him towards getting the vegan burger. I was like, it's probably less calories, it's everything's like plant-based. yeah, okay, it's not like amazingly healthy food, and you know, it's not the best thing in the world, but it's going to be less damaging for your kind of performance potentially than going and having animal flesh that's rotting, and you're going to have to, your body's then going to have to deal with that whole process. And it was quite interesting to kind of see. He must have had people around him that were like plant-based bodybuilders and things like that, because he was really, you could see it in his eyes. He was really struggling to decide whether or not to flick and go. And I'd left before he actually went.
Oh.
But it was so good to just
planted that seed though. Planted that seed.
Yeah.
So next time, who knows?
He was just like, it's my cheat day, and then it's just like, well, you know, it's your cheat day. Go for this option.
Yeah, but I think Elle, are you in the chat now?
Hello.
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 You're finally there. You're making a lot of rustling noise when I tried to put you on before. So.
Sorry.
No worries. So thanks for coming on. So what was your opinions of the debate?
I actually just got here, so
you've missed the debate.
Yeah.
But we just had a 2-hour long chat with a farmer.
Oh, how did that go?
Yeah, really good actually. Very, very, very constructive. So I mean, watch it back when this is finished, I guess, and you can catch up.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything you kind of? I mean, I'm just kind of doing a bit of a free for all. I'll stay on for like another 25 minutes or something if people want to chat. So, I mean, is there anything you kind of wanted to hop on and say? Anything that was kind of coming to mind?
What's the topic? I'm sorry, of the debate.
Oh, so I mean, well, the topic of the original debate, like it was mainly about, is it humane to raise and kill animals? But we're kind of discussing kind of whatever at the moment. So we've been discussing a little bit more about, stuff like the KFC burger and Burger King, and how we can use the corporations to kind of our advantage to kind of leapfrog us to where we want to go. We had Stephen come on a minute ago. He was talking about there's funding that's available in the US that can help farmers transition, that we should be kind of trying to access. So I mean, to be honest, there isn't really a set subject. If there's anything you wanted to talk about, jump right in. So
well, I am actually not vegan, so.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on. So yeah, here's a good way to start. Why are you not vegan, and why are you why did you decide to come over to my channel? That'd be a good start.
I saw you post about it in a server in Discord.
Oh, okay. Which one was it? The Ask Yourself one?
Yes, it was Ask Yourself.
Oh, great. Okay.
I'm not vegan because I just haven't been persuaded of the arguments thus far.
Okay. So, I mean, what arguments have you been kind of given? Let's see what you've been told.
Well, mostly...
actually, easier probably than you trying to explain every argument given to
Yeah.
you. What is your argument? What is your actual argument against it? You said you haven't been convinced, but what is your actual argument against going vegan? What is it that's kind of stopping you?
Well, that is my argument. Basically, that I don't believe that I should make a drastic lifestyle decision based on insufficient evidence or bad arguments, in my opinion.
Okay, so let's see how far we can convince you then. I think that'd be a bit of fun, wouldn't it? Okay, right. So
I don't have much time, but I will.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm actually only going to be on for another like 15 minutes anyway. So
okay,
we'll go through it as quickly as we can. So, would you agree with this statement? We should not exploit or kill other living sentient beings if it is unnecessary. Would you agree with that statement?
I think there's a lot to unpack there. For example, what do you mean by if we don't need to?
Yeah,
how do you define need there? Necessity.
Yeah, I guess you can see. Well, I guess it's not a vital need. I mean, you can put this across anything, whether it's human or animal. As a general rule, if it's something is unnecessary for us to do, we don't have a good justification to do that. It would
right.
be
Right. I kind of find the whole necessity argument a bit difficult to pin down.
Okay.
Because it's kind of vague and ambiguous.
Okay. What I'll do then, I'll explain why I think eating animals is unnecessary, and then you can maybe explain why you think it may be necessary. Then maybe we can go there. So As far as I'm concerned, the science is pretty clear. If you look at the position of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which you might be familiar with, it's like the largest collection of food and nutrition experts on the planet, over 100,000 members. They've released a peer review statement that clearly states that a vegan diet is nutritionally adequate for us, and that we can, it's appropriate for all stages of life. And that's been backed up by the British Dietetic Association and the NHS and all the kind of big organizations there. So with that in mind, purely on a nutritional basis, we have no need to consume animal products, because we do not need them nutritionally. Now, living in a Western society, I mean, we could make an argument for people that are maybe like Inuits or tribes people that might not have as much access to things, but us in a Western society, we have access to alternatives in abundance. We have supermarkets pretty much everywhere. Everything we need is available to us. So I would deem us needing to eat animals as unnecessary, because one, we don't need it biologically, and secondly, we have alternatives readily available to us. So I would see it as unethical to exploit or take the life of an animal when that's the case. I mean, what would your kind of come back to that be?
Well, as far as the health argument is concerned, I'm not particularly convinced, because I'm a pescatarian. Okay. And given the available literature, I haven't seen anything that has led me to believe that a pescatarian diet would be unhealthy for me.
Oh no, that's one thing. I haven't stated at all that eating animals would be unhealthy. In fact, I don't even bother going down that route. There are a lot of people that will, and they'll say you can get heart disease and everything. I'm saying even granted that you could eat animals healthily, I would still say it would be ethically wrong to do so, because you'd still be taking the life of an animal, and you have another option, which is, I would argue, equally, if not, you could argue more healthy. It doesn't matter if it is. We'll stick with equal. You have another option available, so that's where I would go with that.
Right. Well, the assertion of moral superiority, I feel like that's unsubstantiated, because there are animals dying in the production of crops. So,
of course, yeah.
Right. So if we grant that there are intentional deaths on both sides, I don't feel that the vegan option is more ethical than what I'm currently doing.
Okay, well, firstly, if we take just animal agriculture as a whole, the vast majority of plants are being fed to animals. So the actual amount of crop deaths involved in animal agriculture is far higher than just the people that are eating the crops directly.
Right.
That doesn't end there either. I would actually go as far to say that we need to eat crops as a part of our diet. I would say that plants are a necessity. So even if animals needed to die, if they needed to, obviously it's stuff that we would like to eliminate. We would like to lower pesticides. We'd like to kill less. Even if animals did die, I would actually deem that as necessary for our survival, and we would have a justification of survival. I don't see people living off a purely 100% meat diet and being healthy for it. So I deem that as not possible.
Well, I don't see how you're making that logical leap there to necessity with respect to plants.
Well, it would be protection of your crops. We would require something to live. So if we had to do something for a necessary reason, as much as we don't want that, obviously veganism isn't looking to have crop deaths at all, if possible. It's only a current problem with the current crop system that we have. We actually want to move past that. But if it is a necessity, then at least we have a justification for it. Which we don't.
But I'm not advocating for a entirely meat-based diet either. Yeah. So I feel like if we define necessity in terms of what we need to survive, the entirety of my diet is what I need to survive. So that includes animal products that I'm currently consuming.
No, but you could trade those animal products for plant products, couldn't you?
Right, but the availability of alternatives doesn't mean that I ought choose those alternatives, does it?
But you would also agree that with plants, there is no definitive thing to say that an animal died for what you eat, because this is a big thing that I notice. People argue that when you plow a field, for example, all these animals died. But if I'm eating 2 cups of oats in the morning, there is no definite thing to say those 2 cups of oats alone were responsible for death. There is a maybe, and a maybe that something might die.
I don't think.
A definite.
I think that we can make the inference, given the evidence that animals are in fact dying. This is not. I don't think it's up for debate. In crop production through the use of intentional lethal pesticides and also
but you would agree that I could source, say, oats without killing animals.
Well, you could, but the majority of vegans are not doing that, and also
why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we?
Vegans, because there's no moral obligation for them to do so.
No, it's because we currently don't have that option.
Yeah, but it's not. They're not under the moral obligation to choose those options. Vegans aren't obligated to solely consume exclusively veganically farmed foods.
Oh, well, by the definition of veganism, then yes, we would be. If we had an option in a supermarket to pick up some monocropped things that involved pesticides and the death of animals, and next to it we had the option to get something that didn't, then by the definition of veganism, we should take the other option.
That isn't per the definition of veganism. I believe that it is right, and so if that's subjective. So if according to someone else, they believe that, well, I believe that paying an extra $10, let's say, for this veganically farmed produce is not worth it for me. I'd rather just buy this monocropped food. It's it's up to the person. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just arguing again from the practicality of it. But what we're trying to do ultimately is move past this, and to do that, we have to get people on board with a plant-based food system to then push plant agriculture itself to become more ethical. The end goal is not monocropping; it's not pesticides. We want veganic farming, we want vertical farming, we want hydroponics, we want things grown more locally. We want to be able to source food, not have to import foods from the other side of the world. What we're trying to do, though, is we're using the blocks that we have available to us currently. We don't currently have the option to most people to be able to pick the option which involves 0 pesticides and 0 death. Some people just can't possibly do that. But if you're in a position where you can, so just say, let's just say you're very poor, you can't afford crops that are all those things. That falls under, it's not practicable for you. You can't do it. You can't physically afford it. If you've got the money to do it, you should do it. Would you agree with that?
Well, what would that mean? Would that entail that then the previous product that you were consuming has now become non-vegan, or what does that entail? I understand.
It would be it wouldn't be non-vegan, but it would be. Technically, yes. Like in a way, you could say that it would be non-vegan if it was possible and practicable to do it. Then, by the definition of veganism, yes,
right.
You would be correct.
But I think if you were to add that stipulation, most vegans would not be vegan technically, because most vegans would not be willing to go that extra mile. I'd say that.
Which is the thing: if people aren't willing to go that extra mile, then I would debate whether they are truly vegan, because I know for a fact, me personally, if I can have the option, if I can go into a shop and I know that there's a product which has not used pesticides and has been grown locally and stuff, and I can afford it and it's possible and practical for me to do so, I would do so. I would think that is the right thing to do.
Would you then say that, for example, junk food vegans are not really vegan?
I would say that the junk food veganism thing is what you got to realize is we're in a transition period right now. It is impossible to be 100% vegan right now, which I think we can all agree on. It's not possible. What we can do is do the best we can, and a lot of people are coming from a diet of the junk food options and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not going to say that I've never consumed them, because I do, because and I know it's wrong. I do it, and I know I shouldn't do it, and I try and eat more whole foods. I'm happy to admit when I'm a hypocrite.
So why is it then? Why should I feel persuaded to switch over to a worldview that is hypocritical?
because what we're aiming for is something that isn't hypocritical. We're aiming for the end goal where we can actually live by our morals. And but unfortunately, with the society as it is, we have hurdles that we need to come across. And
can I say the
the
same
way we're going to get
thing?
that is by people getting on board. Because if
Right.
we promote the plant-based system and we show demand for we want these more ethical food choices, then that's just going to make it easier for all of us, and we're going to find a way to get.
Right. I believe I'm doing that as well in my own way, right? Because I do not consume factory farmed meat or conventional eggs. I have a garden in my backyard. I shop at farmers markets, so I believe that I'm contributing in my own way to this progressive ideal.
But do you think there's a distinction between animals that are necessarily bred into existence and for a purpose and don't actually get to choose what happens to them, and animals that are maybe subjected to something like pesticides but at least have a chance to get away?
No, I don't know.
Because I would see a big distinction between that, because if you're literally breeding an animal into existence to kill, I would see that's far more unethical than killing an animal and allowing at least a chance to get away. I'd see that as there's a big distinction.
Well, I don't see the bringing of an animal into existence as something that's inherently immoral. I don't see how you're getting to that.
Would you accept that in the human context, if we brought a human into the world to do a certain task for us, or let's put it into the animals, same context, the animal? Would you agree with breeding a human into existence for us to kill and eat them?
No, would not.
Okay, then
No.
but why not? Why is that okay, but it's not okay, but it's okay to do it to an animal?
Well, because according to my ethical system, I value human beings more than animals. So,
why is that? What is it about humans?
Well, I believe that human beings have the quality of personhood, and that's something that I value.
But just for example, then, if you were just valuing it purely on personhood, then you would think it would be ethically okay, I take it, to say factory farm gorillas who don't have personhood.
Well, no, because I actually view that personhood comes in degrees, as with sentience coming in degrees as well. So,
but you're arbitrarily kind of issuing your definition of person.
I don't see how my allocation of moral consideration is any more arbitrary than just valuing sentience impliciter.
But how is sentience any arbitrary? Sentience is we have a subjective.
How is it?
So what you say? Sorry, repeat it. Sorry, we're talking about.
Sorry, I just don't understand how you can say that personhood is arbitrary and sentience is not.
No, I'm saying personhood's arbitrary to you because you're kind of issuing it to where you feel personhood should be. You wouldn't agree to factory farming the gorilla.
Well, right, because I believe that gorillas exhibit behaviors that are in alignment with what constitutes personhood.
Yeah, but they don't have personhood, do they?
Right, to a degree. Yeah. Right, just like sentience, just like you'd say that an ant is not as sentient as a human being. It's the same thing.
Well, so you're saying degrees of personhood? Is that what you're?
Exactly.
Okay, but where do you draw the line?
Well, I'd say animals like great apes, elephants, for example.
What about pigs, the fifth most intelligent animal on the planet?
The fifth? I'm sorry?
I was saying, what about pigs? They're the fifth most intelligent animal on the planet.
Is that empirically proven that they're the fifth?
Yeah, but you can look that up. Yeah, they're the fifth. They're above dogs.
I think I've actually looked over some of that information, and I didn't find it that convincing, especially if you were to test a pig next to, for example, a border collie or one of the more intelligent breeds of dogs.
You can. There's a lot of. I mean, we obviously we don't want to dive into studies and stuff now, but I mean, go look it up. But I mean, okay, even if we said that they were just under a dog, we'll kind of steal what you're saying and say they're just under a dog. They can still exhibit, very intelligent behaviors. They can solve, they can solve puzzles. They can do a lot of stuff. So, pigs are currently in the farming system. So, would you say they should be removed?
Right, but the ability to solve puzzles in a vacuum is not something that I value.
No, but it's not. So I mean,
a computer could solve puzzles.
So how are you defining personhood?
Well, personhood, I believe it's the ability to have higher order thought processes, for example, metacognition, the sense of self-awareness.
But we understand there's humans that are on a intellectual level of some animals as well, so they wouldn't hold those properties that you say you value. So, but you wouldn't agree to
which humans are you?
Like severely disabled humans.
Well, I would grant them special consideration, seeing that they are part of a let's call it a personhood species.
Okay, but isn't that just arbitrary saying, well, you're part of that species?
Well, I don't believe that they're owed to that. They're owed that consideration.
But that argument, wouldn't that argument just be species though? Because you're the same species.
Well, it's actually personhood though. I mean,
yeah. but they lack all the things that you find value in. So right. let me give you a hypothetical.
Let
me give you a hypothetical. Just say there was an individual that was not part of the human species, but they were like humans in most ways, and they had, they were like a disabled human, but they were not within the species of human. Would you?
So what are they? I'm sorry. I
mean, actually, we could even go back and we could pick another species of, we could say anything. We could say an alien race. I mean, hypotheticals. So if we just say there's another race of people that are similar to humans, but they're not humans. They're not within our species. But they're like they have the same abilities cognitively as a disabled human.
Yeah, you see, this like a human, I don't know what that means. I need that to be, I can't conceptualize as of a like or human like. I don't know what that is.
Okay, so they have the same biological makeup. They have they have a brain, they have a heart, they have I mean, you could even argue down to, well, actually, if it was DNA, it'd be same species, wouldn't they? So we'll say
they share some DNA.
We'll say they have a different DNA, but they are like humans. They look like humans. They have.
It's basically you're basically describing what a
I'm doing
cow in a human shell. Or I understand.
What I'm doing is I'm just removing. What I'm doing is taking a human and removing the species of human from them. And saying,
right, but you're also attempting to extract out the personhood from whatever that being is that you're.
Yes, I'm saying if there was a race of people that had the cognitive abilities of, disabled humans, they were a species. Would that be okay to do to them what we do to animals?
Right. So basically, I would say what you've described to me is a race of cows. A race of a species on the level of cows. So why should I oppose to that? If I'm okay, if I claim to be okay with the slaughter of cows for human consumption, it would be inconsistent of me to say that.
Wouldn't you say it's inconsistent that you would protect someone who is basically exactly the same within our species?
Well, they're not exactly the same as
Okay, well, I'm going to say they're exactly the same. All we've done is change their DNA, so they're no longer a part of our species. So they look the same, they act the same, they do everything the same, but they are like a disabled human.
Yeah, this likeness that you keep mentioning, I feel like it's kind of a gotcha.
Okay, they are identical to it. They are identical to a disabled human, except they have different DNA, which puts them in different species.
If I, let's say, I value human beings, and I come across a race of aliens that look exactly like human beings and behave exactly like human beings, I think it would be logical for me to then value those beings, since they have this quality that I appreciate in human beings.
But say they have the same. They act the same as a disabled human. They have that sort of.
So they're exhibiting the same behavior that I value. So why would I not value them?
And what is that behavior?
Human-like qualities that you're mentioning, human-like.
But don't
So
animals also have human-like qualities in the way that they can breathe, they can see, they can hear, they can breed, they can run.
Well, I don't think. Would you say running is a human like? I don't know.
Well, no, it's some. I'm just saying. Just the list goes on and on and on. The similarities between humans and animals, except for appearance, really, and cognition.
But that is right.
We're biologically made of the same things. We're
right, but I don't value biological makeup simpliciter. I don't see why I should, and I don't find anything particularly odd or bizarre about valuing the human corporal form either. You know, the first thing most people equate with what a person is the physical body itself. You know, so
actually just to because the thing is, I've had a lot of ask yourself arguments, and we're just going to go on this name the trait circle forever if we don't come off of it. So what I actually like to ask you, because I like to do things a bit differently anyway. I can argue the philosophy side stuff, but it's generally not my kind of direction. I'd actually like to ask you, if you had access to plant-based foods that you knew would be nutritionally adequate for you, and you knew didn't have any pesticides and didn't involve any animal deaths, would you choose that over pescatarian?
No.
Okay, and why is that? Because now we've got a distinction of definitely no deaths to
why
to a death.
Right.
I'm just trying to change it up a bit, just to try and make it a bit more interesting. So,
right.
Yeah,
I feel like that would be also an inconsistent move if I were to make that, because we do not strive for zero animal deaths in all aspects of our lives, I don't believe. So why would I single out this one portion, this one facet of my life and say I want zero deaths here, but I want a trillion deaths here?
Because it's something that's easy to do, and it's possible and practicable.
Well, I don't think.
As human beings who have empathy, we should empathize with the fact that we know.
That? Right. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying. As humans that have empathy, we can empathize with the animal that's life would be taken, and we would understand that we have an opportunity here to make an easy switch to not cause harm to another sentient being. So and that's why we should do it. Other things like we have trouble with, and we should do the best we can. But that's an easy switch, and I think if it's an easy switch,
but I feel like vegans tend to just assert that it's easy to go vegan. If it were that easy, don't you think most people would be vegan, at least in first world nations?
No, this is what I think. I think veganism is easy. I think what is difficult is relearning the supermarket experience and actually knowing what is available, because people just don't know. They don't know. Everyone finds it hard at first. What's that, sorry?
So then it's not easy.
No, but I'm saying if it was easy, this is what I'm suggesting. If it actually was easy, if you could just walk into a shop and it literally said, this food here, this plant food, resulted in zero deaths, right? It was that easy. It
would then go back to the inconsistency that I pointed out earlier, which is the inconsistency. To me, I'd feel like a hypocrite to say that, insist that this portion of my life has zero animal deaths occurred, but these other portions just whatever, just have kind of laissez-faire attitude about it.
But you wouldn't say you're a hypocrite for eating the fish.
Well, how? I don't understand how that is there a contradiction with
because
my worldview?
Because you are a sentient being, you value your life, you can feel pain and suffer. They also are sentient, they also value their life, they also can feel pain and suffer. You wouldn't want that done to you, so therefore doing it to someone else would be hypocritical by your own moral view.
Perhaps if I valued sentience, but I don't.
You don't value sentience?
No, in a vacuum I do not value sentience, no.
Why is that? Why don't you want
Well, like I said, I value personhood. I don't feel like sentience. I have a reason to value sentience. I'm not convinced that I should.
Okay. So, but by your moral view, though, okay, it basically means we can factory farm 99% of animals, and that's absolutely fine with you.
Well, what would be the difference?
What do you mean? What would be the difference?
Between what we're doing now, and I don't understand why, like, if we were to capture more species of animals to factory farm them, what would be the difference that I don't understand the distinction there.
Well, we'd be causing. Well, what I'm saying is you would have to extend that to across the whole animal kingdom, and obviously the problem's big enough as it is. Do you want to go down a road where you can open it up and say, well, you know what, every single animal is going to get factory farmed now?
Well, I don't see how my position would follow from that if I personally don't think it's. I don't think it's the most ethical choice to participate in factory farming, so I don't see why my position would lead to. Just
okay. Well, actually, why do you disagree with factory farming? If you don't value sentience and you only value personhood, why would factory farming be any worse than killing it in any other way? Surely it wouldn't make a moral difference because they're the same. You don't value the animal anyway.
No, but no, I think there's an erroneous assertion there. It's not that I don't value animals at all. I value animals, just not as much as human beings.
Yeah, and that's fine because I value humans higher than animals as well. And it's not that we don't need to value them on the same level. All we have to do is respect that they are on this earth and experience it in the same way as we do, and have just a moral consideration for them, and have a basic right to life, basically a right to life.
That's where we disagree. There's a fundamental disagreement there because I feel that I do confer moral consideration onto these beings, just not to the extent that you do.
Okay, so where do you draw the line then? Because
I draw the line with. I'm sorry.
So mine is, if we don't need to hurt them, then we shouldn't, and that seems like a fairly sensible line to hold. It's the same. It's exactly the same morals I hold for. I wouldn't walk down the street and punch somebody because I know it's wrong.
Well, okay. I feel like I like to take a more pragmatic approach to this situation. In the current world that we're living in, there are crop deaths that we have to reconcile with our moral choices.
Yep.
And so taking that into consideration, I don't feel that I would be living more ethically if I were to go vegan. I don't see how that's the case.
But granting that, would you not say that by coming into that movement and working towards what I've been speaking about, you would actually be on a path to making everything more ethical because you're actually supporting the cause that is looking to make those improvements?
Well, I think that's conjecture in a way, because I believe that supporting the practices that I do support is also sort of on the same path to better.
I wouldn't say it is. Animal agriculture will is, you know, basically the sad thing about animal agriculture is, unfortunately, factory farming is the most sustainable way to do it because you can get more animals in a small space. You can you can feed them up faster. Technically it kills less animals, factory farming, than it would on a kind of grass-fed kind of thing. And obviously, being against factory farming, we'd only be looking at things like grass-fed. And I know you're only talking about pescatarian here, but
what do you mean by it kills more animals? Grass-fed kills more. What do you mean by that?
No. I mean. So no, what I was kind of saying is, so feedlots, because they can actually grow animals faster and they keep them into a smaller confined space, they can actually get, as far as calories go, they can get more calories with less animals. So technically, see what I mean?
Yeah, I'd actually be okay with raising the welfare of these animals, the living conditions, even if it entailed a higher price rate. I wouldn't mind paying. I'm already currently paying higher price for my animal products.
Yeah. I mean, I've got nothing against obviously raising the quality of life for all animals, but unfortunately, what we have to realize is when we start to do that, then everything starts to expand. The the land usage becomes more, the water usage becomes more, the resources in general become more, and the big solution that everyone wants to go to if they want to eat meat, which is generally pasture-fed animals, to reach the demand of what we currently have, it's just not physically possible. We just don't have the resources to do so, which would mean a drastic change in people's diets anyway, towards more plant-based things.
I'm not sure why, for example, the fields that are used to grow crops for these factory farmed animals couldn't be repurposed for grazing, regenerative grazing for these animals, for example. Or, for example, silvopasture is also another possibility that people should look into.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. There are certain areas where we could put them on, but I think when you look at the extent of the amount of grain that's being fed these things, and not all of this land is going to be grazable as well, which is one of the big arguments that people use against vegans as well about growing crops on there. It's going to be far more difficult. But one thing we can do is, where we might have a field that might not be able to grow grass again, you can put a building on there and make a vertical farm or a hydroponic farm.
Right. Then it also, there's also factors that we'd have to take into consideration, like the energy required to run that building, and the harm that would cause.
But there's already people doing this. Like there's actually you'd have to look it up. I haven't got the study with me, but it's so people are actually growing crops in the desert regions of Australia, and it's completely run with seawater and solar power. So it's completely using minimal energy, and they're managing to grow a whole range of crops out in the middle of nowhere. And that's the good advantage about plant agriculture, is we can actually we have these technologies. To be honest, with animal agriculture, the best technology we have to make it sustainable is lab grown meat, which I'm not against.
There's also forms of aquaculture that are sustainable.
Well, of animal agriculture,
fish aquaculture.
Aquaculture.
Yeah.
So about like fish farming.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever actually looked properly into fish farming? I did an entire thing about this for plant-based news. So.
That's specifically why I said certain forms. I'm aware that some of them are awful, but there are fish farms that are well managed.
Yeah, but again, that would kind of just go back to the, if fish farming is in that thing is sustainable as it is, but when it starts growing out to a mass scale, is that going to be scalable to reach the demand?
We don't know what the future holds. We don't know what wild card inventions or innovations might come about. So I don't feel that.
I think what we can agree on is that if they can nail down lab grown meat and make it sustainable, that's going to be far more sustainable than any type of animal agriculture.
Well, I'm not against lab grown meat, but I'm also not against the consumption of meat as it's currently farmed. Well, in the forms that I approve of.
But I would say for you, because it seems like it's to get you to think the same way as me, I'm going to have to change your opinion on animals. Obviously, you said you don't value sentience. I could be here for an hour trying to convince you why sentience should be valuable, but you've probably heard it all before. So my argument more with you would probably be is why would you support the industries that are not going to be sustainable long term, rather than supporting the ones that may be flawed as much as yours are, but ultimately will get us to a better situation down the line, because that seems like the more ethical option.
Well, I mean, we don't know. Like I said before, I mean, we don't know what the future holds. And vegans are currently supporting monocropped practices. That isn't going to be sustainable either.
Wait. Vegans don't support monocropping. Vegans don't want monocropping. It's just the only thing that is available to us. In fact, I've actually made an effort to try and look at what things I'm eating and try and work out what are potential monocrops and stuff, and try and actually lower the amount of stuff that I'm eating from monocrops, because I think monocropping is terrible. But there are also things as well when it comes to things like that. These things can be improved. What we've got to remember is the farming industry ain't run by vegans. is still run by the same people that are running the animal agriculture. They're not thinking about the things that we think about. So what we need to do is get in there and try and change these things. What we need to do, though, is show demand for these things, and the way we do that is by buying plants and by being like, we want this.
But I do purchase plants from my local farmers market, and I grow a large majority of the plants that I consume. So
that's great. That's great. I encourage that.
Yeah, but I'm a pescatarian, but my husband does consume land animals, and I source personally the meat that he consumes as well to make sure that it's of the highest quality.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to kind of work out exactly what your argument is, because I'm guessing one, you're saying it's, well, basically you're saying that there's death on either side, which is true. I would argue, and the thing is, I won't not admit that you can come up with diets that include animals that will ultimately kill less animals. For example, I do believe that, just say a hunter, for example, a hunter could technically, if he just literally grew things in his garden and killed a deer, then technically he would kill less animals than a vegan, which is using the typical supermarket system. What I would argue, though, is that the intent of vegans is not to have any of these things, to not cause harm during plant agriculture, to not do this. And we're looking at something which is going to be sustainable long term, that is practical for the entire population. Hunting is something an individual can do. It's not something everyone could do. If everyone started hunting, the wild animal population would go extinct in about a couple of hours. These other things, like it's a shame you missed the debate, actually, because I think you would have found it very interesting. She was like a small farmer, very kind of local, growing her own animals, that kind of stuff. Those kind of things, again, they're kind of like that. They're trying to solve a problem, but ultimately they're not scalable. They're not sustainable, and all they're going to do is ultimately cause bigger problems down the line. So what we have to admit is everything's flawed right now. Everything's got its errors, but what is the path that ultimately is going to lead us to the best place? And I believe, from the evidence I've seen, that a plant-based food system is going to be far more ethical in the long term than any other thing I've seen.
But when you say plant-based, what you mean is 100% plants, and I don't think the evidence has the preponderance of evidence has gone in that direction.
What would you say is lacking? What would you say is lacking there? What evidence is lacking in that argument?
From what I've read, they do advocate plant-based, but not 100% vegan. They don't believe that, given the knock-on effects of the entire world going vegan. I don't think that's scalable either. So to say that my current diet is unscalable, I don't believe that the vegan diet is scalable at this current moment either. So,
but why would it not be scalable? Because we have the technologies, like I said, to grow plants anywhere in the world, anywhere. Deserts.
That doesn't take into consideration through deserts, for example, the availability of different.
So let me explain how veganism would help food deserts. If we could have vertical farms, which you can set up in any old warehouse, you could literally be growing plants for the local communities in these food deserts. And in fact, there's actually a huge movement of people which are actually setting up their own veganic farms within these food deserts, because they feel, one, is healthier for the community, and two, it's a sustainable way to do it. In fact, there's a huge movement within the hip hop movement, strangely, of people that are advocating for plant-based diets to help food deserts.
But it's something that is kind of just in its earlier stages. I don't think
it is. Again, I won't deny that it is in early stages, of course. But
exactly. So we can't empirically say that this for sure would lead to such a result in the future. So I don't.
Can we say the opposite's going to be any better?
Well, even if I can't prove that definitively, I could just say that I could assume the agnostic position And since my default position is non-vegan, then I just remain non-vegan.
But wouldn't it be better to go on what the available evidence is and not just
right? But
assume?
the available evidence, like
The available evidence is saying
it isn't saying
plants.
100% vegan for everybody. It's not saying that either. Even the health side of it is not saying that every single person should go vegan. So
they're not saying everyone should go vegan, but they have, like I said, the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics. So it's 100,000 food and nutrition professionals. They have made a peer-reviewed statement that it's nutritionally adequate, and so far there's been no evidence to show otherwise. So
right, but what I'm saying is that the evidence is not that it's superior to all dietary options. I don't think.
Oh, did you want to hop in at all? I keep seeing you kind of put your finger up or something. We're kind of leaving you out of the conversation here. I don't know if you had anything to say at all. Oh, I can't hear you. Your audio's. I can't hear you at all. Can you hear him, Al, or is it just me?
No, I think he's muted.
No, he doesn't. Let me try and mute you and unmute you and see if it works again. Hold on. Okay. Anything now? No, I can't hear you at all. You've disappeared. I mean, you can always type the argument if you want. It was a bit long way of doing it. But
I think he's gonna leave and rejoin.
Yeah, I feel bad. He's just got a bit sat there. Yeah, I think he should, have a chat as well. I find all this stuff really interesting. Like, and I really appreciate you coming on and having a chat about it. I do think the more we talk about it, and it's only going to reveal what the truth is, I guess, isn't it? That's what we're all striving to find out. Obviously, at the moment, from the research I've done and everything, and I think just from my own. I mean, actually, you probably don't. Do you actually know much about me and what I do? I don't know if you.
No, not really. No.
Okay, so basically, I actually run an animal rights organization called Virtue. We do a lot of kind of undercover investigation stuff. So, as far as kind of empathy towards animals, I am very high on the empathy scale. Because I've been to factory farms, I've seen what the animals are going through. So I do think about everything from the victim's perspective. I don't, I think what we think is secondary to that, which might kind of make sense more what I'm saying, if that's my kind of stance on things. But yeah, actually, he's back in. Do you want to try your mic? Are you back in?
Is that better?
Yeah. You're back in now.
Cool.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened there.
No. Did you want to hop in then? I've been kind of hogging the conversation.
No, that's cool. One of the things that I've kind of like heard, and I wanted to just make sure was kind of like differentiated is, I know earlier on, you said about that the science isn't pointing towards everyone going vegan, but a lot of the science, from what I've seen, is suggesting that a plant-based food system would be, better environmentally, and there's, obviously arguments when it comes to health as well, which people battle on both sides. I'm not someone that's kind of scientifically minded, so I'm not going to kind of weigh in on the kind of health side of things. But from the environmental aspects, I've looked into that. And if you just look at land use and water use and resources in general, that's something that is huge. But I want to make sure that we're not confusing a plant-based food system and the benefits that's going to have when it comes to veganic farming and veganic vertical farming with veganism in and of itself, which is obviously the philosophy, because it's something that's I don't think intentionally for anyone, it's they're getting mixed in together.
I know what you're saying.
Lumped in, and I know it's just something to make sure that we make sure that obviously we're aware that veganism is a lifestyle, is the easiest way.
Yeah, veganism is a philosophy, and plant-based is a diet.
For ease of conversation, I just use vegan because that's what most people.
It's just the go-to saying. Right. Yeah. No, I totally get that. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Totally. But yeah, like I say, I mean, I don't know what else we can really say. I mean, like I said, the evidence I've seen is it leads towards this is the better option. I do think, because I value sentience, which obviously I understand you don't, that I think that it is unethical for me to take life. I find that hypocritical to my own morals, because I value my own sentience and I would not want that done to me. I understand that although deaths happen,
Can I?
oh yeah, of course, yeah, I'll hop in if you want. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to ask kind of a counterfactual.
Yeah, sure.
Don't you believe that animals are given a better chance, so to speak, if on a farm, let's say the best possible scenario, best possible conditions, as opposed to living a life full of predation and disease, starvation?
Oh, so what's it comparing to the wild, do you mean?
Yeah, if you were that animal, wouldn't you rather live on a farm where you were well taken care of, as opposed to the life that is sort of predestined for these animals?
I don't know. I guess if you change that into the human context, I mean, would you rather live a life that's only going to last X amount of months and be killed, or would you prefer one where you have to take the risks but you live for as long as you survive? I guess that would be the alternative scenario, wouldn't it?
I guess that's the case for humans as well. I mean, we don't know what we're going to be born into, but you know, even for humans, there's risks on the day to day. And for some humans, they are born into scenarios where they are captive, and you know, for them that's their best life. But for other people, it wouldn't be.
Yeah, I guess it's the kind of thing where should we be deciding on the comfort levels of these animals? You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think that's where we differ, in that I believe that it's enough for me to improve or to seek to improve the living conditions of these animals. That I don't believe that I am under the moral obligation to maximize their well-being. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is not for improving their conditions. My stance would be they should never have been born into that situation in the first place, because it was unethical to bring a being into life to be exploited and then killed. And I see that as unethical in itself.
Well, don't you feel that you are sort of imposing your human perspective, so to speak, onto these animals?
Because you're making an assumption that, but you're also making an assumption that they want that, and we don't know.
Right, but animals, right? But I mean, if we were to compare just being able to experience life, you know, I would say that that's positive in a vacuum. Experience life, especially the life that I'm referring to with respect to these animals. So I don't think it's fair to say that.
But we can't guarantee they're going to have a good life. We can't guarantee that they're going to have a good life. They can.
Right, but that's why I don't. Well, in my case, I can, because I only support the farms in which they are guaranteed a good life.
No, but that's not the case. I've been to what are meant to be some of the nicest farms, and they're still suffering.
I think I go kind of above and beyond the call of duty with respect to what most meat eaters are willing to do. I actually go out to the farm, I visit the farm, I take a look around, I speak to the farmer, I see the way these animals are living, I check their eyes, everything like that, to make sure that they're in good physical health, and so that I can feel good about my decision to support this.
But you would admit that you're not there 24/7 to see everything that happens to that animal, are you? So you can't guarantee. All you can do is make an assumption on the moment that you see them, whether you feel that they have been cared for to your standard. But you can't guarantee it.
We can say that kind of about anything. We could say that when I leave my child, I don't have a child, but let's say I did. If I leave my child at the babysitter, how do I know that they're not beating my child or, God forbid, molesting my child when I'm not around? You know, I don't think we should live life that way.
No, but I think that we shouldn't put those animals in that position in the first place.
Put our children in that position.
Because you're assuming that they're going to have a good life by doing so, when they could have an absolute miserable life.
Yeah, but it's, like I said,
so why
children?
Why gamble with their life, and why not make it so they don't exist in the first place? You know what I mean?
Don't you feel that this is analogous to the example that I just delineated.
Yeah, but the thing is, with a child, you chose to have that child, right?
The child didn't
Right.
choose. The child didn't choose to be born.
It didn't choose to be born, which is exactly the reason that I'm not going to have children. So, because I don't feel that I don't feel that this is my personal opinion. I'm not I'm not an antinatalist. I don't care if people want to have children, then they can. But
then you're not of the position that people should not have children for fear of the children being abused by the babysitters.
No, I mean, I think you should do the best you can, but like the thing is, you don't require. I mean, having a child really is a selfish act, right? It's for no other reason than for yourself. It is. If we're honest, it's a selfish act, is it not? You do it because you want a baby. The baby doesn't ask to come into life, does it?
Well, it's
so
also.
I'm just saying it in the plainest form.
But you're also giving the gift of life to this child, or to experience life as well. So
you are, but you do understand that when anything comes into the world, there is also an element that child could also have a terrible life as well. Correct?
Well, that's true, but
yeah. So it's a gamble, right? It's a gamble, right? And you can choose to have the gamble with your own offspring because that's you and your body. But when you're gambling with another animal and you're making that animal have a baby and gambling with their life, I don't think that's ethical.
I don't think seeing as we act as kind of proxy moral agents for these animals, I don't think that there's a distinction there. Just as we act on behalf of other people who are mentally disabled or blind, deaf, so on and so forth, our children. I don't see the distinction there with us acting on behalf of these animals if we believe that.
We're basically playing God. We're deciding these animals are, we're like, because they're not even connected to us. A baby comes out of our own body and we're involved in that whole process. If we want an animal to come into existence, we impregnate them, then we decide. We dictate.
So what about just bringing a bull in, let's say, or bringing a buck in to impregnate the female animals? That's still playing God in your position.
Okay, but let's just go one step further. Let's say that animal gave birth to that animal completely naturally, right? As soon as that animal comes out, if you're claiming ownership over it and you're claiming that you're going to do whatever you want with it, that's unethical. You've just claimed ownership over something that isn't yours.
Right. Well, we do that with our own children.
Yeah, but the children's yours. The child's yours. The child's come out of your body.
Animals are also
part of you. The animals
are also. I have a dog. My dog is mine, I believe.
It's yours as in what would be a legal sense. I don't think it's ethical for us to own another living being. I don't think that's ethical.
Well, what's unethical about owning something just in and of itself? What's inherently immoral about that?
Well, it's not so much. Well, it depends what you mean by owning in of itself. Like if you're just talking about an inanimate object, I'm talking about another being claiming ownership over another being's life is.
Why is that wrong?
That is wrong because that's not your life to take, is it? And you would.
I'm not taking my dog's life.
And you are. You're taking control of that dog, and you're.
Yeah, but you have to prove that this.
Think about a dog. Okay, think about a dog. Okay, I've actually done a whole talk on the ethics of pet ownership, so I got a lot I can say about this. So think about the ideal situation of a domestic dog. Generally, these dogs have been separated from their families. 2, every part of their life is dictated from when they get fed, when they go out for a walk, where they sleep, what rooms they're allowed in, what things they're allowed to get on and off of. That whole thing that they are now made to be sterilized because we don't want them to have more babies because that then causes more problems. So we've got a necessary evil now of having to do that. The whole life of a domestic dog, even in what is seen as the nicest situation, is generally still,
I think,
with unethical things. And the most ethical thing to do would be to just leave them alone.
Right. I think you're kind of falling back into what you did earlier, which was imposing your human perspective, your anthropocentric perspective.
No, I'm not saying anthropocentric at all. I'm saying this is what we do to them, and
you'd have to be able to prove that those things that we do to them result in a reduction of their well-being. You haven't been like, you'd have to prove to me that my dog is unhappy in my home.
No, okay, actually, have you ever seen a film called Room?
No.
Okay, so this is the example I always use for this. So basically, the concept of the film Room is there's a woman and she is kidnapped and raped, and she gets locked inside a room, and she has a child inside the room. Now the child doesn't know anything outside of this room. All it knows is what's in there, but the child is happy. Just because the child is happy, that doesn't mean that the situation the child is in is ethical, because we know that the child should have a proper life outside of this room, and that is exactly where I see domestic dogs. They can have an element of happiness because they know no better.
I wouldn't agree with that, because I believe that human.
So would you say it's ethical for the kid to be in the room then? Would you say that's fine?
No, because what is required for optimal human flourishing is not the same as what is required for a dog to flourish. Let's say I believe in Maslow's hierarchy of needs with respect to human beings, and that those needs ought be met for a human to, or at least seek to meet them for a human to be to flourish. And I don't believe that that a dog that has sort of been with us, has been at man's side for many years, would prefer not to be in my home, for not to cuddle up to me in the sofa, for I don't.
But you do understand that dog knows no better. It doesn't know the alternative. It can't make any decision on whether it would or would not prefer, because it just doesn't know. It's never been there to make a decision.
Well, that's all. I mean, you can say I've never been to Hawaii. I might like it there. I might prefer it there. I might feel that compared to where I'm living, that my actual current living.
But you would think it was unethical if we forced you to live there, right? Without your consent.
Yeah, but this there you go. Can animals consent? Because they
can't, which is why we go.
So you're right. So you're saying
exactly. So they can't consent. So we shouldn't do any of these things to them.
No, that's not. I think a non sequitur, because if you were to force me to remain in a certain area, I would be aware that I'm being forced to remain here, which would have a detrimental effect on my psychology. It's not the same as a dog.
So just say we've got a disabled human and we put them there, and they wouldn't have any concepts of the alternative either. Would we say that was ethical, or would we say they've been kidnapped and kept against their will? You know what I mean?
No. There's no will there either. There's no.
Hold on. I want to let. Sorry. What was your name? I don't want to just call you fat vegan all the time.
It's Tony.
Tony. Okay, Tony. You wanted to chip in there. I just wanted to let you get a word in.
Yeah, like the things that have obviously been mentioned, like the thing with the whole room scenario. I know, like El, you're saying obviously you would know that you were being forced to be kept somewhere, but the point is, if you had been brought up in kind of captivity, so like in room, the child, I can't remember the name, but they grow up and the mother does the best job possible to give them the best possible life, and as far as the child's concerned, all of their needs are met. They have a relationship with a spoon that's melted, and they call it melty spoon. They go in the closet when the guy comes in who's kidnapped the mother, sort of thing. But as far as the child's concerned, that's just life. They look up and skylight, and that's all they see of the outside world, but they don't know any better. They just see up. So from your point of view in that scenario, you wouldn't know that you were being kept in that place. If
that's why I mentioned
all things being equal.
Right. I understand your objection.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned that the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which one of them is self actualization, and I don't believe that child has been given an opportunity to self-actualize in the world. So I don't agree with that.
But I mean, what it boils down to, though, really is, and you're saying about the needs. I mean, a dog's basic natural instincts can't even be brought into play in a lot of things. I mean,
what are those instincts?
Well, for example, breeding, mating. Some dogs will never even see another of their own species, and I think that's really sad.
Well, I
Some
think, mhm.
some dogs will never ever see another dog.
And I don't agree with that either. I think that
Yeah,
dogs should be allowed to socialize with their own
yeah,
species
yeah,
as well.
and dogs are normally pack animals, and we're not allowing them to do that, but
Well,
exhibit those behaviors generally.
you'd have to I understand what you're saying, but again, you'd have to prove that my dog would prefer to be with a pack of other dogs rather than by my side the majority of the time. You know, I agree that they should be allowed to experience these things, but not that the dog would prefer to not
I know,
be in human presence.
But what your position means is that you're just taking the position of, from my assumption, I think they have a good life, so therefore
Well,
we'll bring them in. So we'll bring them into existence. We'll bring them into existence without them actually knowing.
But there's no
what
evidence to
happens.
the contrary. We know that what we do know
So
is
if
that dogs enjoy the company of human beings. That's what we do know.
Yeah, but what we also know
That's
is that
why
all the
they've
unethical
evolved
things.
higher sides.
What we also know is all the unethical things that happen to these animals. Like we can't say it any simpler. That as much as some dogs have a good element of freedom and stuff, they're literally they're still like prisoners to us.
Yeah, that's because you're
No, they are just look at let's look up like the definition of prisoner.
Well,
I'm sure it probably just falls under that.
Hold on. There's are children prisoners?
Are children prisoners? Yeah, but children are let free.
Okay, my dog is let free as well.
No, but children are let free.
Is a 3-year-old a prisoner?
Yeah, but the thing is, right, there's a difference because you're taking on the responsibility of a child. Okay, you're making sure that they're not getting hurt. A dog has the ability from a young age to go out and live on their own, which is the time that we would say to a child when they're old enough, go off into the world and do your own thing. Dog doesn't get that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But this living on their own is what you haven't proven that they would want to do. What if living on their own is actually living with human beings is what they prefer? That's the life that they prefer to live.
Yeah, but what we're doing is we're bringing them into.
Dogs have actually domesticated themselves.
The thing is, don't you think, without knowing that for 100% sure, it's unethical to gamble with that just by making the assumption?
Well, I don't think it's a wild inference to make. I think inference to the best conclusion would say that these animals, at least the ones that are given a good life in the home of their owners, are happy. Are happy animals given full lives. They enjoy the time with their owners. They go out, they play catch, and they sniff other dogs. And I don't see why that is immoral inherently.
Well, so you don't.
I'm sorry.
No, but I mean, there are such things there which are just inherently immoral, which is keeping another being for your own. You're taking ownership. I think taking ownership over another living sentient being is in itself wrong, regardless how well they're kept. Slavery,
and that's why
a person, even a happy slave, is still a slave. Would you not agree?
Again, you're comparing.
No, I'm just using the definition of. No, I'm doing the definition of someone who's been kept as a slave.
Yeah, but I think we run a risk of running into dangerous territory here with conflating ownership and slavery, because then our children are slaves as well. This gets into really muddy territory, I believe.
Yeah, but like I said, the distinction between humans and the dogs is that the humans at least are part of you. You've given birth to this human. You are its mother. You're not the mother. You're not the mother to the dog. You're not a relative to the dog. So you have no attachment to that animal whatsoever. You've claimed for yourself.
Okay, then so are you against adoption?
No, I'm not against adoption, but that is because they are already here. In the same way, I'm not against adoption of dogs. They are already here, and I think we have a moral duty to look after the living beings that are here. But I would not say that we should start breeding orphans. I know that's not possible. It kind of is, but you know what I mean. But I wouldn't say that we should start breeding more orphans into the world. Like I said, I don't think we should start breeding more dogs to be in the world, especially when there's millions of dogs already suffering in shelters across the world because we can't even look after the ones we've got. So how is it even ethical on that basis to bring another dog into the world when we can't even look after the ones we've got?
The reason why I brought that up was because you were claiming that the difference between children and our pets is that our children are related to us, and we brought them into the world and so on and so forth. Dogs are not. If I adopt a child, is that child that doesn't have any?
But hold on. The distinction is, right? You actively partook in a system which bred that dog into existence. You didn't take part in the breeding of the orphan. The orphan is just a sad result of
we're just
parents or whatever, for whatever reason. It's a different situation.
So then we just come back to what you stated previously, which is that you find the inherent the bringing of a life into this world inherently immoral, and I cannot simply grant that prima facie.
I don't think it's inherently immoral in all cases. Like I said, I'm not fully against people giving birth. I mean, I'm not going to have children myself, but I'm not against it. That's just my personal thing. But I mean, like, I do. It is a natural thing for humans to procreate. I'm never going to say it's not. Like, do I think that the world might be better if we cut down on bringing people into the world? Yes, but that's by the by. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to another species, it's completely separated from that process. It's nothing to do with that. It's a completely different scenario.
Now you're being speciesist.
How am I being speciesist?
Well, I don't understand why there has to be a distinction there. I mean, if we do this to our children, why is it immoral then to do it to animals?
Because we're not breeding. Okay, this dog, for a start, isn't even getting bred into what was meant to be its actual habitat. It's getting bred into a. So think about it this way: what are dogs? What are dogs in the animal kingdom? Okay, because they're not wild animals. They're not humans. They're in limbo. They're in limbo.
Okay, but no, they're not, because
they are. What are they?
They're a domesticated animal.
Yeah, but they exist. They're not in the wild animal world. You do realize all domestic animals, with the exception of if they're wild caught or something, but the majority of animals are man-made animals. We've created them through selective breeding. Never has there been a wild Labrador. That's never existed. There's never been a wild pug. There's never been a wild Border Collie.
I know that.
We've created these for us, for our own selfish reasons, right?
I don't find the creation of the creation of things, living or not, to be immoral, simpliciter. I don't see why I should. The fact that these animals have been bred in such a way that they kind of rely on us for their continued existence, I don't see that to be inherently immoral if the existence that we're giving them is one that they, at least from what we can observe, is existence that they enjoy. So I don't see why that's wrong.
The thing is, but again, you're kind of making the assumption that they enjoy, and you don't know if they suffer.
I think people have observed their behavior, and they could see that these animals are actually they're not abused, they're not exhibiting behavior of stress of any sort.
You say that, but you look at even good dog owners when they leave their dog at home, because dogs are pack animals. Dogs will sometimes sit at a door or window for hours on end waiting for their owner to come home, because they have no freedom to go out and do anything else. Like, I don't see that as an ethical thing or a positive thing. No one leaves a kid on their own. Like, do they? They don't leave their child on their own.
You can. Yeah, of course. Children come home from school and they're home by themselves and so on and so forth. Or maybe
a child has an intelligence where they can go.
Or maybe they're. I'm sorry.
But the thing is, children are far more intelligent than dogs. The dog's just going to sit at the door and wait. The child knows it can go and watch TV or go and play on its PlayStation or read a book or do something. Like, you got to bear in mind
that's not really. I argue that I haven't seen that this is normal behavior in a dog. That all dogs just sit and wait at the door while they're.
I'm not saying they all do. But I'm saying that some do. And this is the thing.
But that's
we're making assumptions.
Right?
It is. It's totally an assumption. But this is the thing.
Okay.
What we've got to look at is all the potential negatives that can come from bringing this animal into the world.
Well,
And
I
I think because there is so many, and the fact that I don't think it's ethical to bring an animal into the world just for our selfish reasons. That's what it's for.
I don't.
Right?
I don't.
It's not for
I
their
don't
benefit.
think-
We're not doing it for their
Yeah.
benefit. We're doing it
Well,
because we want the dog.
Yeah, but they also benefit from it. So I don't see it as inherently immoral. If it's kind of a mutual beneficiary relationship going on, I don't think that's just
Yeah, but again,
wrong.
you have to assume that the benefit is worth what you've done, and you can't prove that.
Yeah, well, what? Well, I mean,
You have to assume it's beneficial for them. How is it beneficial for them? In what way is it beneficial?
They enjoy the life that they have.
How
with
do you
their
know?
owners. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that there are behavioral specialists
I'm pretty sure.
that have
I'm pretty
studied
sure.
canine behavior and know.
But the phrase "I'm pretty sure" isn't really a.
No, but what I'm saying is that I'm not an expert, obviously, but there are people who are experts that we can appeal to, and they study this, and they know what outward behavior is indicative of abuse, or that these animals are suffering, and I don't think that you have made the case for these animals living in perpetual suffering in our homes.
Well, no. Well, my case is we shouldn't be playing God, and basically the down thing we shouldn't be deciding that just because we want a dog for a selfish reason that we should breed a dog, another animal, another sentient being like us into existence. I don't think that's right. I don't think, in the same way, I don't think that someone should decide they want a human and then decide to breed a human to keep as a pet. I don't think that's ethically right either. Like,
it's not about keeping as like I said.
Even if the person was happy, I still think that situation is highly unethical.
But that goes back to what I said before, that you can't keep a human as a pet without violating the needs of this human being to flourish.
Yeah, but the thing is, those needs are just the statement of one individual. Like that kid in the room, as far as we're concerned, his needs are met. He does everything that.
Yeah, but I think
you know what I mean.
I think
those needs are not objective. They're an opinion.
No, I'd say that it is what is objective is that that this child hasn't been given an opportunity to self-actualize. A child that is locked in a room 24/7 cannot self-actualize. That's just impossible. So
yeah, and I would argue that a dog has had no experience to actually partake in its natural behaviors because of the domestication process.
Natural behaviors. We're talking about a domesticated animal that has, as you've said yourself, been bred.
Exactly, and I think that's highly unethical in itself. Like if we were breeding humans, like, you know, actually, what do you think about this? Okay, this is a kind of follows on for it. People are starting to genetically pick their children, and the traits they want from their children. What's your opinion on doing stuff like that? Do you think we should start to create these hybrid humans that just do what we want to do and act the way we want them to act? Do you think that's a moral thing to do?
I don't see anything inherently immoral about that either.
But
as long as these
oh, hold on, Tony wants to hop in. Go for it.
Okay.
I'm just gonna like tap out because it's like getting late and people are like.
Oh yeah.
Like, okay. And I need to like learn some French as well before I go to bed. So,
no worries. Yeah, I'm gonna have to finish in like 8 minutes anyway. I've been on here for 3 hours 51. This is a long live.
I didn't. I'm supposed to get started on dinner, but I decided I just got caught up in the moment. So
no worries. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting. I find all this stuff really interesting. So obviously, if I'm ever live streaming again, please feel free to hop in. I'm always happy to chat about things, you know. And it's good to dive into these things and discuss them because, you know, if we don't discuss them, we're never gonna figure it all out, are we? So
no,
I think it's good. Well, actually, why don't we just end it there? Because I don't know where we're going to go from here anyway. We're kind of just going around in a bit of a circle.
Yeah.
But no, as I said, I appreciate both of you for coming on and everyone for sticking with you. If anyone's watched all 3 hours 52, you have.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
I was literally about. The funny thing is, I was literally about to come off when Tony hopped in, and that was like an hour ago. I was like, yeah, I was going to do like another 5 minutes, but oh well.
Sorry about that.
This is the first video I've done in like ages, so like, why not come back with a mega stream? Might as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great stuff. All right, guys. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for coming on, and I'm sure I'll do another one of these, and maybe we can pick off from where we left off, or hop into another subject or whatever. Or
sure, that sounds good.
Great stuff. All right, guys. Well, yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll hopefully see you all soon.
Thanks, Alice.
All right, bye bye.
Yeah, take care. Bye. Bye.